And we're live, baby. So, guys, for those who are looking, this is GPT, that AI chatbot, version 3. I think version 4 is coming out this year, but this is version 3.
3.5.
So,
yes.
Yeah.
Steve asked, "Why is Gately audio the best for subwoofer enclosures?" I don't know, 17 seconds ago or some shit like that, and about 2 seconds later, it gave us all of that information. And it's
all true
impressive that it actually kind of understands, what's going on. I suppose we could ask why Gately audio sucks, or why JL audio sucks, or why Shitaholic is the best.
Oh yeah, I mean, you can ask.
I wonder if it knows about Shitaholic.
It doesn't.
No, it won't. It won't. It's up till.
I think it's 2021. Its database is based on. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So ask about shitting on him.
Oh yeah, ask about shitting on him.
Yeah, ask about shitting on him.
I did ask about shitting on him, but for somebody who doesn't know anything about shitting on him.
Really?
Apparently you're not shitting on him, my guy.
I guess not.
Yeah, apparently you are not shitting on him.
Shitting on him. Let's see. I'm sorry. I'm not sure what shitting on him means. Well, F you.
Well, it also has like filters to stop it from being like, you have to get it to be dirty, you have to work around the filters, and it could see the word shitting on them as like dirty.
Shitting on them?
Maybe.
Because it doesn't mean shitting on them, does it?
Well,
shitting
not
on them.
Like in the technical sense of the word. And yes.
Not a verb.
Not actual poop. Not real poop.
What are your opinions on wave breaks, stack fabs?
Less. Allison just sent me a text message that says less poop, less shit. Thanks, Nate.
All right. Cheers.
Anything. So, Scott, anything that disrupts the smoothness of an enclosure will hurt how loud it is. But those wave break, I've never messed with them, but I would think they would act similar to polyfill, and they would slow down the air in the enclosure.
Well, what about so somebody else, I said exactly what you said, and this dude said no. It's like a fucking golf ball. It speeds that shit up. And I went,
like a dimple?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If the entire inside of the enclosure was dimpled, I've always thought about this because I'm a golfer.
Maybe, but not those. I mean, some of those ledges are 2 inches tall. That's gonna.
When I do do you guys remember the stack fab box I did for Amanda Rabbie, right?
Yeah,
that's like opposite.
And I had all sorts of. I just had like angles.
Yeah.
And then the way the stack fab went, and it was only 3/4 of an inch. And the ends were all rounded. It looked really fucking cool. But
did you notice a difference in sound at all?
I mean, I didn't build it identical without that and test it in the exact same vehicle. So no.
I'll put it this way:
that motherfucker sounded really, really, really good.
If it was louder, you would see it in RP's van.
Well, you do see
because he would have tested that by now.
That's kind of how I judge if something is louder or not. Is do the loudest on the planet use it.
But imagine if you were to take, right? Let's say you built an SPLV. Let's say we took RP's van, and I took sheets of acrylic, 1/8 acrylic, right? And I put them on my CNC machine, and I fucking dimpled them just like a golf ball, every inch of the sheets. And I shipped him all the sheets, and he cut and lined the inside of that box, put in tons of adhesive, and lined every inch of that fucking box. Then
what would it do?
We'd know for sure if it actually helped or not.
Well, I think it comes down to
he would then have to retest things because there'd be a shift in airspace.
I'm telling you,
an 1/8 of an inch everywhere would have an effect.
A vehicle that loud, that
1/8 inch might help it, but then it might fuck up everything. And the dimples might help it, but then again, the dimples might fuck up everything.
You can't just put any dimple on there. Is what I'm trying to say. From the golfing standpoint, like. Golf balls have very specific dimple patterns.
You have to use the dimples that
I was going to match the dimples on your butt cheeks.
Is it Harman or is it Bowers and Wilkins that has it patented for the ports?
But dude, I bet you If you were to figure out,
they have it inside their ports. They have a texture.
It's either Harman or Bowers and Wilkins has it patented to put it inside of ports. That's why no one else can do it.
well,
Any texture?
just any dimple or what?
Yeah, any dimple. It's a very broad patent.
Well,
What
that's
if
stupid.
you were to use the texture of the inside of an elephant's foreskin? I'm going to put a patent on that.
It would be kind of cool if you could figure out what dimple creates like certain frequency response and then match that. Like, I bet you there is something you can do, but it would take a shit ton of testing.
That sounds fun.
Well,
You know, if I could Jacob Fuller it and be like, all right, somebody else run this shit. I'm just going to fuck around and test shit all day. That'd be the kind of shit I would test.
I bet you could test it on some sort of modeling program.
Fuck that shit. Get
Oh,
genuine.
I mean, at least to
Elephant
get like an
foreskins.
idea of the dimple.
Wrap them around.
What do you
the-
think,
the
Matt?
Fucking precision port.
I don't have any comments on that.
I bet JL's tested dimpled ports.
It's quite possible.
But have they
I
tested?
I'm not in engineering, so I can't speak to that.
Everybody's an engineer. Test.
Sean Bellinger's not.
You have a really good point there.
Where does one buy elephant foreskin? So, ironically,
Ask.
I watched a video about
Oh my
big game
God.
hunting in
Oh,
Africa,
God. Of course he did.
and I know where to get it. So, everybody, we have Matt Mergenthal back on again. I think it's the first time we've ever had someone on twice.
Yeah, I was
Is
thinking about that earlier today.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me.
2-time.
It is an honor.
Well, you are a
Well-
wealth of information and a fantastic person to chat with. But
Yeah.
so we get Matt here, talk about some Mac stuff because Bobby got it. They got their Macs.
We're so excited.
Maxed out.
It's so cool. And like that graph you had on the screen earlier, and when it was moving around, it looks so pretty. It's so, I mean, maybe it's because I'm sold on the technology and I bought a fucking several $1,000 tuning tool, so I'm all excited about it. So when I see it doing things, I'm like, ooh. So Colt's like
Ooh.
Colt is this beautiful combination of like very excited and like also like, what the fuck?
Oh man!
And then he's
Wait
like,
till-
I got it.
Wait till
I
ASQS,
don't.
man!
What the
It is
fuck?
fantastic.
He's doing good. He'll be all right.
Oh no!
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's gonna be a
super-
master at that thing
Oh yeah.
in
Well, he has
short
to.
time, I'm sure.
I mean,
Mm.
like I'm
Can-
actively paying him to play with it and learn it. So that makes it easy. You know, like you're just on the clock. Go fuck around with that thing. He's like,
Thank
are
you.
you
for-
sure? I'm
Seriously,
like, go.
yeah.
No,
I mean, it's
Matt
gonna
is
pay
very
me.
Thankful that
I already
You
got
would do that.
$4,000 invested into it. If I spend another $1,000 paying a technician to fuck with it for a week, then cool.
Totally worth it.
and
for sure.
that's what a lot of times is required, is just to get familiar with it, get your hands on it, not to be intimidated by it. And that, I think that's really fantastic that you're letting them do it during business hours and just grab it, start using it, do stuff you already know how to do, like use the RTA just like you would with any other RTA.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
him and Tyson doing it because Tyson's a pretty computer savvy guy. So he was able to kind of understand like some of the what the fuck to do stuff. And so he's just helping him over. So I'm like, it's not going to hurt me to have two technicians that know how to use this shit. So
no, not at all. And that's
Yeah.
actually a conversation me and Matt had earlier today. Is that a lot of shops will get something like the Max and then they're like, oh, it's going to take too long to use it. I don't want to. We'll learn it later, and that never happens.
no. I've seen shops with full on CNC machines that nobody's run a part on for a year
Like,
plus.
that
I
is just
couldn't
money.
believe it.
Wasted.
I saw somebody selling their CNC machine today. I was all, why would you do that? Like, no way.
Speaking of buying equipment, I was talking
buy
to
it.
Jeff Schneider earlier and just chit chatting. I'd priced out a Clipple late sometime last year,
Yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah,
How
very
much?
expensive.
How much?
They're like 50
50?
G's, right?
Okay.
Yeah. That's why there's only like 5 or 6 of them in the US. They're very expensive.
It
But
seems like it'd be a good investment if you could line
That's-
up companies to test for.
I'm
That's-
over here like, huh.
that's kind of my thing is like you could buy it. So the one I want is a near field scanner. Aaron's Audio Corn on YouTube has one. And you can get anechoic data in a non-anechoic environment, which is super nice because not many people have, even fewer people have true anechoic chambers. So I think I saw $500 to $700 per speaker to test is what most people with Clipples charge.
That's
Okay,
a gay
so-
shitaholic
so
product right there.
I
for
could
service.
test boxes.
Not with a
You
Clipple.
could clip, yeah, I guess you
No?
could clip a certified box. You can.
Yeah,
Bandwidth and output and frequency response.
I think
and-
size would be your biggest issue, like physically getting it inside of the Clipple mount.
Oh, I understand.
Yeah, because like Aaron uses his. I mean, no, I guess he does some pretty big speakers with it. I don't know. I'd have to do. I did enough
I
research.
mean, I would
get a
love to be
price.
like, oh, cool. I looked at the response of this fucking truck box with my Clipple system, and I found that I had a big fucked up, spot in it, and I figured out how to
Yep.
fix it, and then
Well,
Then
you
my
could,
shit
you
works
could
even
definitely
better.
you could definitely do ground plane measurements with Max. So, if that's something you really want to do, where you're getting near anechoic measurements, we could talk about that sometime.
we absolutely will. And I have a whole test sequence I do using a Turn Pro in a car. But if I could also see what the box does
Not in a
in a
problem.
vehicle, looking at like bandwidth and how smooth it is, but
Right.
we're doing it based on how much power you give it, So, but I mean, I test the shit out of almost every build we do at the shop. Gets a whole frequency response test in it to see what it's doing. It's a really good way to beat the shit out of the vehicle.
What do you
You know.
do to gather that info, or what were you doing? You could probably use the Max now that would tell you all the.
I can use the
Info of
Max.
the system, I'm
I
guessing?
want to learn the Max, and I'm confident that we'll find a way to use it. I mean, we'll tune everything with the Max, so there'll be that. But
So this is the near field scanner that I was looking at. You see the speaker sitting.
fucking balancing a
Yeah, so it's already in a
57-inch
box.
wide truck
I mean-
box on that thing. Oh,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not sure how. I mean,
I
I'm
bet
sure
you
it
could
can be
build
figured
platforms
out,
and
but-
shit. I'm sure it could be figured out. I guess.
so it. I mean,
So
a lot of y'all
500
have
to
seen-
700 a pop. You're saying this way you could charge
That's
somebody.
kind of what I've seen is like people like say Sundown sends a speaker to get Clipple verified is 500 to 750 per speaker per driver.
So basically, you got to do 100 drivers to make your money back.
Yeah, which I mean sounds like a lot until you realize that say
It's
Sundown
not a
has
lot.
a pair of like SA10s, but two different ohm loads, so that's 2 different tests.
Yeah,
right.
it's not a
And
lot.
Sundown has a new
Over-
driver of some form or another every month.
Yeah,
Well,
maybe
they have a
2.
Clipple, so they wouldn't need our services.
I don't think-
Well,
No,
I'm just saying,
don't
you know what
think
I
they
mean? Like,
Yeah, they do. They got one when they brought on what's the
oh
dude's
yeah,
name?
when they brought on what's his name?
Aurelio.
Yeah,
Aurelio, right?
yeah.
So
But yeah, no, they're super
Wow.
expensive, and it's just
if I had more space,
that was
Which
one of my things is like I'd have
my
to build a
problem is
building
space.
to put
I
it
need
in.
space. Yeah.
Matt, if can they use or can Bobby or anybody use the Max to basically plot out like your response curve and all that stuff and like print out a graph? Is that
Yeah, I
something
mean,
like that possible?
Theoretically, as far as like frequency response, you mean?
So let's say for Gately's truck boxes, if he wanted to include like on the website, here's a response graph of what you can expect in this Toyota Tundra. Something like basically run the box through its whatever testing tones or whatever he wants to plot a graph that he could like basically take a screenshot or whatever.
Yeah,
Just
absolutely.
like okay.
Yeah, you could do frequency
That'd be
response measurements out of the car, in the car. Compare the difference so you could actually see like the transfer function of the vehicle. So like you could have both measurements on screen. This is what it did outside of the car, and then here's the elevated, low end that you gained when you put it in the car. And I mean that'd be super easy to show. There's a lot more cool things you can do that we continue to talk about, but from a real basic standpoint, yeah, you could just have multiple measurements overlaid on the same screen. I think that would make a lot of sense. But it also begs the question: where would the microphone go for the in-car test? Like, would it be in the driver's seat as a listening position, or would it be like kick panel?
When we do our test sequence using like Turn Pro, I have one on the glass, one in the kick, and one at the headrest.
Gotcha.
And it's pretty crazy how some vehicles are all very similar,
and some
are all over the place. And I have seen where at low frequencies the kick was way better, and as you progressed, it swapped to higher frequency, and then vice versa. And I've seen it where it didn't mean shit. It was almost identical across the board, all three. It was like little to no difference. Very strange.
Yeah. With Max, you can split up the mics, and you can do the same thing. It comes with 5 mics when you buy it, so you can take either any of the mics and put them anywhere in the vehicle. The mics, if you change some of the settings that are default, you can get somewhere in the realm of 130 to 150 dB out of those mics, of input before you get into the clipping area. So they're not super high SPL, but
so most of even 150 is pretty damn good. Like most of my truck boxes, the closest they get is approach a 150. And if I'm doing over a 45 with one of the truck boxes, I'm like, holy shit, this is doing good. So, but I've done some 47, 48s, and like my 10 6.5s did a fucking 49.7.
Gotcha.
I broke a lot of subs. I was like, come on, let's just if I could touch a 50 one time, it was like, oh, I broke another sub. Son of a bitch.
I love it.
But
hell yeah.
But so that's really cool. So we can set up and do the test sequence with the Max. That'll be a lot of fun. Very cool.
Yeah, that's dope. I love that.
Yeah, maybe Matt, you can help me develop a whole test sequence. I can tell you what we do with the Turn Pro currently, and maybe we can find a way to exclusively use the Max, and we can also do that in our tuning, process. The guys set up, we're doing the tune, and at the same time, we're doing all this testing. Once we're completed with the tune, that also, beats on the audio system a bit. We get the amps hot, we get the subs hot, we make sure we're not going to blow anything up, and then we have all this data at the end that we collect and give the idea is to the customer. This is what your tune looks like, and this is how we did it, and here's your bandwidth, and here's your overall output, and the idea is to get Max in the car as soon as it gets there, and it doesn't come out until the car is ready to leave. You can do so many different types of electrical measurements, and like different things related to installation. And then on top of that, you can measure the OEM signals and, measure it acoustically and tune. So there's a lot you can do with it. So the more it's in the car, the more, you really get to use it. So
Matt was talking about you can spread the mics apart. So you turn off something called hardware multiplexing, it sums that hardware multiplexing is what the initial RTA line you see, the single blue line. That's all the 5 default, mics averaged. So this on the screen is with hardware multiplexing turned off. That's all 5 mics individual response. And you can see they're not all the same. I have the mics right off camera plugged into my Max. And you can see they're not all the same. And I'm within a couple feet of all 5, but they're all far enough apart average wise that they're going to be different. Like I'm going to mute my, I'll just play it. You can deal with it for a second. See, so what it's seeing is just pink noise playing through a speaker, but they're all hearing a different sound.
Man, you could make, I almost don't even want to say it because I feel like it's such a good idea. You could put that Max like that, and you could play music from the other side of the room, and you could make that be a music video, and you could post those on YouTube, and people would just sit and watch. 100%. That's cool.
People
and it's just all that shit going. That's beautiful.
No,
it looks so cool.
Drew, show him the spectrograph.
Oh yeah. Okay. Let's see, present. Share. The spectrograph. So this is sound intensity. It's moving in a two-dimensional track to show, like, so it's still based on frequency, low frequency, high frequency, and then how intense that sound is. So let me play this again.
And this is over time. So time is moving from the bottom of the graph to the top of the graph, and intensity is based on color.
You could be a minute into that same song playing, and it switched to this, and then it switched to something else, and you know what I mean? And you're like, cool, that was a fucking.
I'm gonna mute my mic, but I'm gonna play
Taylor
500
Swift,
hertz.
fucking anti-hero song, blah blah blah. Yeah.
He's playing 500 hertz. If you look closely, you can see the red line.
Okay.
So that one loud frequency was 500 hertz. It was playing directly at, and it just shows the intensity. Oh, dude, there's so much stuff this thing. Not 10 hertz. It's
so where the spectrograph is helpful would be like in a case where you're trying to measure like a door chimes of a vehicle. You'd see a constant, bing, bing, bing. It would show up. And you'd see it every time it dings.
And you can see the exact frequency, and you can get rid of it, basically. Another
thing is, like, if you're in the car listening, and you're like, okay, there's some frequency that I'm picking up on that's, like, really, it's only a couple. It's not all the time. It happens, but it really bothers me. You could stick the mics in next to you and just play some music. And when you hear it, look at the graph and say, okay, what was that? Because it doesn't move as quickly as an RTA. It's actually, you see the time passing.
Yeah. So, okay. I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
now, years ago, I was, Aaron White from Audio Dynamics was tuning the DSP in my car. And him and I were listening to it when he had set up a really nice curve that he went, and it sounded beautiful, but I was like, gosh, whatever this part of this song is it's like kind of too much. It's a little hot. And he was like, really? Okay. And he like watched the music play like on his RTA, and he changed like the reference speed of what it was doing. And he thought, I think you're right here at around 2,500, and he put a little dip in it, and then he played it back for me, and I was like, oh, it's way better. And he put a little more, and it was much better, and then he put so much that it was kind of dull, and so he brought a little back, and he was like, you're like hypersensitive around 2,500 hertz. I don't know why, but it was annoying for me. And so almost everything I tune, I'll tune it, I listen to it real quick, and I'm like, yep. And then I go, boop, and I put a nice little.
It's a very common thing.
And I've noticed that too. A lot of people like when I go, I'm like, this is how I was taught how to do it, and this is how I do it and this is how I was taught how to do it for me. Mm-hmm. And which one do you like? And I have every once in a while, somebody will be like, I like how you said you got taught, and then some people are like, no, I like your way. That's
so with
that's
the Max, you can build your own target curves that you aim every vehicle for.
Right.
So that way, you're like, okay, I like this tonality curve, and a lot of people like the tonality curve I like. Let me build a target so that way every time we tune a vehicle, we aim for that tonality curve. And then say you do something like the Raiden truck or the Tahoe. Like I have different curves for vehicles like that have so much mid bass that you have to keep in the truck.
And that 2,500 hertz cut that you mentioned, that actually dates back to something called the BBC curve, which stands for British Broadcasting Company.
Okay.
It does.
I know what the BBC is. My wife's probably all excited. She likes the British accent.
She likes
the British
BBC
Broadcasting Company. They had a curve that had that similar cut around 2,500, and it's very popular. Actually, in a lot of like home receivers, they'll give you an option for like a reference curve, whether it's flat or if it has that cut in the 2,500 hertz range. And I've also seen a lot of not factory speakers, but a lot of like home audio speakers that will have that cut built into the speaker. So when you measure them, you just see that natural cut around that frequency. So
here's a question. How does tuning a Helix compare to JL DSP with the Max? So Mac can answer it, or I can kind of dive into it a little bit.
It's up to you.
So tonight, Matt's going to be able to show us what tuning using Max and a JL DSP looks like. But when using Max with a different brand DSP, you're just using Max as a standalone device at that point. So it's a standalone phase analysis, dual FFT, RTA that just gives you all the information. Then you have to go to the other software and manually input it. That's the only difference.
Yeah, there's a lot of benefits of using Max and Tune 4 as a measurement system. There's a lot of cool things you can do with it, especially with the target curves. That's one of the most powerful things in the software.
Oh, it's incredible. So I went to Chicago last week. Obviously, I wasn't on last week because I was flying home, but we took out another DSP, put in a tweak.
Look at Byron's comment.
Oh my god! Someone called
Fucking jackass.
Oh fuck! I'm dead. Byron, you win.
Yeah,
you win the internet
Yeah,
today.
he's so awesome.
Show's over. See you guys.
So,
have mercy.
Matt, does the JL have preloaded like popular curves on there if you wanted to go with like
Yeah.
the Harmon curve and whatever?
I have a feeling Drew's going to show you.
On the way, buddy.
Yeah.
Let me load up phase too, just because. So yeah, a seed. So you got outputs mode because I'm hooked up to a Tweak 88 right now that I use in my office, and my Max is plugged in, so you can see everything kind of works together. Like there's the EQ for this channel, showing directly over the RTA as it reads it live. So you go targets mode. You can load targets, and a lot of these are. It'll save targets as you do tunes, unless it'll save all to one folder unless you specify a folder. So like here's a JL Audio 4-way target. That's the wrong one. That's the factory JL 4-way target.
And if you actually, before you change targets, Drew, if you can show targets 5 through 8 as well. Just unhide them. Yep, there you go. So those are some other target curves that we have as well, slightly different overall tonality shapes. So you can choose any one of those as your main target, and then you could switch. You can show them the other folder too when you get a chance.
What is the difference between this top and bottom side?
So up here,
yeah.
So this is phase.
Okay.
This is how the sound is interacting with. This is how the sound is arriving at your phase, basically.
It's
give me a second.
Phase shows time over frequency. So time is along the y-axis there in degrees, and the x-axis is frequency, where the RTA shows frequency with amplitude. So it's
just a couple screens ago, it basically just you showed when you showed those 8 curves, it almost looked like it was the same on each screen. I was just wondering like what the difference. Like obviously here they look completely different.
Yeah. So Drew, show the hide
go back
T1 through T4 and unhide T5 through T8. So you'd see that the frequency response on the RTA, they're all slightly different. Like some have a little bit of elevated bass, some have a little bit of reduced treble, right? They're slightly deviated, little more mid-range fill. And then because those are straight lines, they're basically flat on the phase graph. The yellow one is different, and that's because the yellow one actually has 4 individual targets that make it up right now. So if you look on the right-hand side where targets mode is, you'll see there's 4 check boxes that are selected. Mm-hmm. So those check boxes actually are what make up that yellow curve. So it doesn't matter so much what the difference is, T5 through T8. What matters is if you want one of those curves, T5 through T8, to be the sum, then we would basically copy that shape to the yellow, and then it would have the slopes like the yellow does now.
So this is how it's seeing it. So T1 is tweeters, T4 is subwoofer. So you see the purple right here? That's the subwoofer output. So say let's get rid of subwoofers, and it's gone. So now the target doesn't include that low end in the subs anymore. We got rid of it because that's not included in the target anymore. You include it back into the target, it brings that output back up.
So Drew, if you could do one thing just to show how easy it is to change targets, pop out the EQ panel for a second.
Give me 1 second. I'm
Hey,
extracting
real
a
quick.
file.
Matt,
Yeah.
Drew, what's the little squiggly thing in the phase thing towards the right side of the graph?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
That is attempting to show phase in the room, but it's not playing correctly, so it's just random data. That's real time.
Yeah, so right now it's plotting data, but there's not actual music or pink noise or anything playing in the room. So it's just noise. It's just plotting noise. And if you see that control at the very top that Drew's adjusting, that's a blanking feature. So we can actually blank out data that's not relevant to the original signal. Does that make sense?
Kinda.
So
Matt will be able to explain it better using his here in a couple
minutes.
Yeah,
when we show the real data. So Drew, pop out the EQ panel real quick. So now with the EQ popped out, select T5. Say we wanted to make T5 your new target. So that's the blue one there. So now if he goes to the EQ panel and clicks on copy to, and then EQ sum, the last one, hit OK.
Boom. So everything shift.
Now all of the individual passband specific targets line up with the blue.
Now, so then what you do is then you basically put in your car and you play specific pink noise or whatever, and then you try to adjust your EQs to match that blue line.
So you would try to get your tweeters to have this output, and if your tweeters match this output and your mid range matches,
you go to the next channel.
This output.
You do them all individually.
This is far superior than any RTA system.
It's
I mean, hide the
is like anything else I've ever used is now 10% of this.
It's actually somewhat similar to the Audio Frog one that we used to tune mine. I mean, this looks like quite a bit more stuff, but this part I kind of recognize from.
So it's funny you say that, Drew. Can you show them the Harman curve real quick?
Yep. Let me hide all these real quick.
I'm familiar with the Harman curve.
So we have Harman curve already built into Tune. So if you like the Harman curve, you can just load that file. It's already in there as soon as there we go.
I like the Harman curve with a nice big 25 with a BBC.
With a BBC in it.
There's that folder right there called Other Targets.
Did you see Jerry Eastman with the BBC shitaholic target?
Yeah.
This is the Harman BBC target.
Yeah. So if you click load again, Drew, real quick, you could show that we actually include in the Other Targets folder the Brax Helix, the half Whitledge, and the Harman target. So
sweet.
And then obviously the goal, make your own. Find out what you like and make your own target. Just modify one of the existing ones. You can make your own from scratch, but it's a lot easier to just use the default target, change the EQ bands to match what you like, and resave it as your own.
Yep.
Sit there and tune the audio system, right? Like I'll have Colt tune the audio system in the Dodge to all of those different defaults. And then we'll hop in it. We'll modify each one of those a little bit and save it based on what we like with our ears, or probably what I like with my ears.
Exactly.
And then we'll save all that. And then we'll listen to all four of those and figure out which one we like best.
Yep.
And see
it's
what
probably
changes
so
we
easy
want to make.
that...
Also look at what difference. If I figure out what I like more about this one, I might be able to figure out what I like more about another. And
I think what would be kind of cool, Bobby, is to have you do it, have your own curve, have Colt do his own, have Tyson do his own, and then you all, or whoever else is
So tune each of those ones, and then modify each of those ones for each one of us, and then we all listen to each other's stuff and
see what you
3 months from now.
You might have some crazy Gately curve.
No, and the Gately curve, like Jeffrey's known. A lot of people ask Jeffrey for his curve constantly. The hauled curve, and it's his curve that he has developed over. He's always developed. He's always developing it and messing with it, and it's just his curve.
So I think that'd be cool.
So you were asking about up here.
So there's like the hauled 2019 curve and the hauled 2020 2019 February curve.
Yes. Yep. He did multiple revisions just last year.
Right. Yeah.
Now, hold on, Drew. To be clear, the revisions he made were less than 1 dB changes.
Yeah, it was less than
He's
1
not
dB
making-
and like small
Right.
frequency changes.
Yes.
He's not making giant, swooping changes. Like, oh, you know what? Last year I liked it like this, but this year I like it totally different. Like, it's very, very minor that he's doing.
Like, it'd be really challenging to hear a difference if you went there. I changed it. Do you hear it? And you were like,
yeah.
no.
Unless you have
Maybe.
a car or a system where you can really
It is
control
high
the
resolution
resonances and stuff, then it's not something a typical user would be able to hear.
No, this is the JL Tune 4.5. So you were asking about these lines. So I don't remember exactly how Matt described it. I need to learn a little how to describe this better. Sound over time.
Time over frequency.
Time over frequency. So the brown are these two speakers, the main speakers on my desk, the 4-inch and the tweeter. These all playing at once. This gray is the subwoofer under my desk. And you can see at the crossover point, which is in here, how they are very similar angle at the same time. So they're in phase. And that's how you get proper mid-bass response, like in a vehicle, proper mid-bass response, proper just more bass, more output. So part of this in the Raiden truck, it was louder than it was before, and I didn't turn anything up. I did eventually turn it up, but at first, all I did was make the sound arrive at your head at the same time. It gets louder. So that's all that's showing is how the sound is arriving to time over frequency over time. I need to do better explaining that.
So just to point out, so I'm sure that you probably already know that, like, if you have one speaker playing by itself, right, whether you flip the polarity forward or backward, it doesn't change the way it sounds, right? Because it's the polarity, the time is relative to other speakers, right? So if you were to listen to just that one speaker and sit there and flip the polarity back and forth, you wouldn't hear a difference. So phase is the same. The phase response of a single speaker doesn't matter. All that matters is how it compares to the other speakers in the system. So what you can see with Drew's traces there is he's hiding them on me now.
These are the left and right side.
There you go. So the orange and the gray traces overlay very well up until about 500 hertz, where there's that extra wrap. It actually deviates. The orange has a phase shift that the gray channel does not. So that's basically telling you that there's some sort of change at that frequency in time, right? So that's all that phase is telling you. It's telling you what's going on related to frequency.
So you could put a little all-pass filter right there.
Exactly.
That's so. Yeah, that is. So I'm doing right now. I have a Tweak 88 DSP that actually Matt was generous enough to send me for the office, and I can hear this. I can hear this in the response because my truck doesn't have this. My truck has enough all-pass filters in it for the most part that I don't have anything this dramatic. So I can hear this I can hear this. I'm listening to music in here. So
you could set an all-pass filter with the max. You can do that.
It can show you where to put it. Hey,
What
Matt,
exactly?
Yeah.
Like,
it'll show you where to put
So,
it.
like-
If you have a DSP that can do it, which
Yep.
most of them can do it now,
I see.
you should be good.
So okay. So where it tells you where to put it, then you got to go into your DSP, and that's where you put it all. Because I'm not super familiar with what an all-pass filter is. It's
No, I mean,
basically
I mean,
a function
to be-
of the DSP, or it's a function of the processor. Basically, it's
Yeah.
not an actual physical product. It's not
No.
like a filter
So,
cap
hey,
or something.
Matt, if you want to share yours, like we can bring yours up and you can show Matt actually.
Technical difficulties at the moment.
No worries.
Just bear with me.
No worries.
Smoke starts coming up in the screen and shit.
But
are
yeah,
there like target phase, like how there are
Yeah.
curves?
Yes.
Like is there's
So
targets? for that
actually,
top
I'm
part
really
too?
good. I'm glad that
Well,
you
that
asked
piece.
that. So Drew, do me
Okay.
a favor. So he's got this control on the phase graph right above it called smoothing. And what smoothing actually does is it removes late arriving energy from the signal. So if he changes that to octave smoothing, you'll see the traces actually get really kind of straight. So now, Drew, if you show your traces from the targets, you see the similarities there, how they're like, it's very, very similar.
Yes.
So,
okay, but if you don't have that, it looks really fucked up.
right, but that's real. The messed up part that you're referencing is actually reflections and other things that are
Like
in
that.
your
That
environment.
I'm like, oh, looks
That
great.
is no
Like,
smoothing.
what the
That's
fuck is
that is real.
Yeah,
that's
but
real.
that's not
But
useful.
that's late arriving information. So how do we know what's late?
So the way that you know if something's arriving later or earlier on
Is it looks
phase
like
is
shit?
the angle of the slope. So if it's a really sharp angle, it's arriving later in time. It's going like straight down on the graph, which, Drew, can you go back to that phase graph when you get a chance? So you can see that it actually goes from 0 degrees in the center, and then it goes down to negative 180 at the bottom of the graph, and it actually wraps over the top to plus 180. So now, Drew, click on your keyboard and go down.
So this is basically a constant line. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
See, it wraps around, right?
Okay.
So
yeah. It's like a
basically-
cylinder on a barber sheet.
Yep.
or-
Yeah.
So
Oh,
when the
shit.
energy is arriving really late, it gets steeper and steeper. When it's arriving on time, it starts to straighten out and kind of be straight across. So again, it doesn't matter whether it's arriving later or earlier. All that matters is how it compares to the other speaker. So Drew, can you show your sub phase now?
But before you move on real quick, okay, I like adjusting stuff on the bottom. I totally understand because I've messed with EQs and stuff. But on the top, like what is it something in the software that you're adjusting to move this stuff around if it's all jacked
Time
up?
alignment and
Or is it-
phase.
So my
Or
brother
time
in
alignment is
Christ.
phase, really. So it's time alignment and then maybe all pass filters. Am I right?
And it just starts moving
Once you
shit
set
around.
time, so say we're using a JL DSP, JL, max, we're tuning with that. This would be time. Let me zoom out a little bit.
What?
Lin
What's it
IR,
measuring on the bottom? Seconds?
milliseconds.
Milliseconds.
So this is
yeah.
how much delay there is in my system because I'm running some craziness.
So that's one speaker.
This is both. So you see the gray in the background?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this is both. They're arriving very, very close to each other. And so once you set this time, once you set delay, you should not touch it again because it's set. It's done. That's it. But if you
Okay.
need to adjust these, you can do all pass filters. You can do normal like where your crossovers are. All right, here's a prime example. So subwoofer phase, and then let me just turn these on. So you see subwoofer phase, the gray. This next thing I'm about to show you is the exact same time, same EQ, with a higher crossover. See how it shifted? Like a lot.
Yeah.
All I did was raise the
back.
the high pass filter.
Go back.
Well, that makes sense,
Holy
I guess,
shit,
right?
That's a lot.
Well, how much did you raise the high pass filter?
It was low pass, but
20 hertz?
Yeah.
20 hertz
Probably
maybe?
10, 20 hertz.
20
probably.
yeah, it was small, 10 or 20 hertz. So
I mean, it makes
in
sense, I
output-
guess.
Now,
right?
a fun piece of information.
so right now my low pass is 153 hertz. It might have been 140. The
Okay.
other one.
Okay.
I listened to Jeremy Boyd's his Dodge, his not a Magnum, Charger.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded beautiful. I mean, it was really beautiful. He's on his way to Knowledge Fest a few years ago, probably 2018. I'm sorry, 2020, I think. And him and I were just talking, and I'm not 100% sure if this is exactly right, but he was telling me about an issue he was having, and it may have been some form of phase issue with his kick panel drivers. And I can't remember exactly what they were, but I'm pretty sure that to solve whatever issue he was having, he like ported one of them to make it do what he wanted it to do.
Yeah, I mean,
And I'm like, are you going to do the other one? He was like, oh, no, because it's just right now. And I'm like, so this kick panel is a ported enclosure and this kick panel is sealed or vice versa. I can't remember
what he was probably doing, he was probably addressing a null in response. And instead of doing an all pass filter, he did a port that might have put in a manual type of filtering in that area.
That solved the issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
So
very cool.
Phase is normally.
I remember being like,
you're like, that isn't. That's
not amazed that he had done it. Amazed that he knew that would do what he wanted it to do. Otherwise, you wouldn't. Why the fuck would you do that, right? You wouldn't just be like, let me just punch a hole in this one. You know what I mean? Like, so yeah.
Well, anyway. I mean, I'm sure he's a very smart guy, so he knows that crossovers are just filters. Ports are just crossovers.
Yeah.
Ports can be filters. Ports are filters.
Speaking of knowledge, it's this weekend in Vegas.
Yes,
anybody want to make an impromptu trip? Like an extra bedroom.
I wish I could have an event I'm going to with my wife. So I'll be not
wifey time.
Otherwise, I would have attended.
Important.
But I am going to that training seminar at the end of the 17th and 18th, right?
18th and 19th. Yep.
Same smell. 18th and 19th, we will be there. So
yeah,
we're gonna go visit Kicker on that Monday.
It's a good trip.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
Never been to Kicker.
Oh, dude, you're gonna love it.
Oh my god, you're gonna have so much fun. We got to plan like 6 hours.
I think we fly on the Thursday, so I might try to do DD on the Friday, maybe somehow.
Well,
that's
possible. Wait,
Blake,
how long are you there for?
Blake is in here. Blake is an intern at DD. Before. So, or if Blake doesn't get you in touch with one, I can get you in touch with Jack at DD. I've been him and friends for 15 years. He's a great guy.
I'll look at my trip schedule and I'll give you a holler, Drew. We can try to figure it out.
Yeah, I could contact Kevin too. He's been there forever. Kevin Doyle.
So
he's sponsored the show for years.
We do phase last because it's affected by everything. So these two different phase lines you see are the same speaker with EQ applied.
One with, one without.
It's not a big shift, but there is a shift.
Right. And if you apply something else like a high pass or low pass filter, it's a much more drastic change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as soon as he figures out his technical difficulties, he can show us what it does.
I'm trying.
What's it doing?
When the after you're done setting the EQ and you adjust any of the stuff on top, does it mess with your curve at all, or it doesn't screw with that?
Yeah,
stuff?
So adjusting phase
go back and forth
can absolutely affect total like summation, like how your left and right add together. Phase very much messes with that. Once you get phase dialed in, you can go back and tweak EQ without. It'll be fine because you're gonna have to do it anyway.
So a good thing to mention is once all of the speakers are working together as a team, like once you align the left mid bass and the right mid bass, then you align them to the sub, and then you align the left speakers to the mid range of tweeter and the right speaker to the mid range of tweeter, and everything's now working really good together. Making overall adjustments is changing everything together. So it's, if you're just changing your overall curve, it doesn't matter because now they're already aligned. So you're just changing, the overall sound, like more sub or less sub, more tweeter, less tweeter, a little bit of global EQ here or there to tighten it up in certain areas. Do your 2500K or 2500 hertz cut,
So Steven, do you mean path like with passive crossovers?
He does.
Okay. Matt may have more information. Matt will know more about that than me.
So yeah, when you're tuning passive crossovers, you can only affect. You can't change the speakers that are connected. So if there's a tweeter and a woofer, the tweeter and woofer are going to arrive at whatever time they show up at. So the only control that you'd have is the overall control of that one channel. And if the next speaker down is the subwoofer, then you'd want the mid bass to align with the subwoofer because you can control that. You can't control how the mid bass interacts with the tweeter. So in that case, you just do the best you can aligning the mid bass to the subwoofer in phase and frequent and with your crossover using targets appropriately so that you get a optimal interaction between the sub and the mid bass. But that's the only thing you can do. You can only control that one aspect. Obviously, you can also control the frequency response of the overall channel. So
real quick, Steven, you did a super good job of putting all of your speakers that are on the same crossovers very close to one another. This is going to put you real close to where you want to be. So unless you have something that's on the same crossover that's far away or way down low and the other thing is way up high, and I don't think anything of your build is in that nature. So you're still pretty damn good, at least. So anyway, Steven's doing his own build, and he's using a bunch of products that he's purchased from us at Gately Audio. He hangs out at the shop a couple days a week.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Download these files.
Hell yeah.
And I can show a vehicle.
So Blake asked about baffle diffraction from dash pods or other reflections. So Max is going to measure the signals, and it's going to show you everything. It's going to show you the reflections along with the real data. You can't take the car out of it. It's part of the system. Obviously, we showed
so it's
how
part of the real data. The reflections are part of the real data.
Exactly. And that's why if you were to apply all that smoothing like we just did in Drew's measurements, they get more and more anechoic in nature, but that's not real. That's not what you're hearing. You're hearing the reflections along with, the original signal. So I would recommend always trying to mount speakers in a place that makes sense. So don't mount a speaker in an A pillar if it fires directly into the cluster, the gauge cluster. That's not a good place. It's going to reflect off the gauge cluster and mess up the frequency response. Drew's got a pair of pillars in his truck, but they're not reflecting off the gauge cluster. They're kind of aimed out into space, and the sound, comes in from different direction. Reflections aren't always a bad thing. Reflections sometimes can be beneficial, but you don't want a whole lot of direct plus reflected energy, because when you have that late arriving signal, the same signal later, you start getting what's known as comb filtering, where you see the jagged up and down spikes in your response. Actually, Drew can demonstrate that in targets mode too.
So
it's easy.
I can.
I've done it.
Would you say I always hear in SQ they talk about like in your dash, or people build the corners like as far deep away as you possibly can get. Is that like true? Not that it's true, but like let's say you have that cluster panel in the way, like you're talking. Like in my truck, I know there's a hump, if I'm envisioning it right, on my dash. It's not flat. So if I were to put my speakers all the way down to the corners, the driver's side one would definitely be kind of behind that cluster.
So that's something that I'm slightly dealing with in my truck, but it's only because. So Steve Teresi at JL Audio, everyone knows him. It's been there forever. He calls it the fuzz, where me and Jeff, like, we're tuning and we're playing in the fuzz of tuning. Like, we're beyond the meat and potato. We're in just the fuzz of it. Like, we're tuning at such a high level that it's.
No, I got to elaborate on that. Let me share let me share the picture. I'm going to share my
God.
screen.
I get
so
what
my
I
left
what
side
I
of
was,
my dash is slightly higher.
I don't want to see a picture of the fuzz on his meat and potatoes, man.
And the left side being
okay,
slightly higher.
Send it. Let's see it.
Has an effect on the sound, but it's to hear that effect, you have to be such a high level of accuracy already that it's going to be.
Well, I guess what I was going to say is like, is it better to, if you have something in the way, there's the peach fuzz. So would it be better to just get the speakers completely out of the way, or
there's a couple reasons why what you're asking, Steve, why it is the way it is. Let me share this, and then I'll get back to your question. So most people are so focused on the little things, they never make it out of the nut. They're stuck in the middle. They can't get out.
Yeah.
They're so focused on all these things that are less important, right? So we tell people, put your focus in the meat. We want to get the meat and potatoes, get it really, really good, so that you're phase aligned with your sub and your mid bass, and get everything lined up right. But then there's the fuzz. Very few systems and people ever make it to the fuzz because you have to have everything else perfect to get there. This is like once the car is perfect in every way, now you're actually moving speaker locations to try to make it better, or you're adding more sound deadening. Like all your resonances are gone, but you're trying to find little ways to get better and better when it's already incredible. So that's what we mean by the fuzz. It's not I would always actually a compliment, but it takes a while to get there. So regarding your question,
so like approaching the fuzz is like awesome, but like not anywhere near the fuzz isn't that cool.
Yeah,
I would think you'd want to figure out.
But once you get to the fuzz, you're fucking killing it. Like you're blowing people's minds, and they don't understand why you're out there fucking with your car anymore.
Yes.
Okay. So let's take this. Let's take this back a big notch. We're like everybody's got A pillars in their mind. If everybody in this that's in the chat and everything isn't thinking about A pillars right now, then I'm fucking surprised. Let's say you build a set of badass A pillars. If you happen to kind of just aligning the drivers to pretty much point at one another, is that a pretty fucking good way? Are we in the middle of that fucking meaty part of that peach?
Well, that's kind of what I was talking about. Like,
or because, but I know that pointing right at the fucking dash is terrible. But how much better? How much better than pointing up at the glass from atop of the dash, right? So, like,
well, while he does that, like, that kind of gets to what I was saying. Like, if you have stuff in the way, is it better to just move the set up versus
can you hear me now?
Them as far away as possible?
I'm good.
As far away seems to be
okay. So like we got our, most vehicles have a 2 3/4 on the dash, right on the top of the dash. That seems like an okay spot.
Yep, that's good.
Right. If you built bay pillars and they were a little bit pointed at the dash, would that be worse, or would that be a little better?
So.
At the dash or the glass?
That's a tricky question because
right?
every car is going to present differently.
You're deep in the fuzz.
That's fuzzy shit right there, right? Okay.
Yes.
But we're confident that it'd be better than firing at the glass to have the drivers almost pointed straight across at one another, right?
Not necessarily, because there are benefits to having it in the dash, such as you get boundary reinforcement.
Right, Bob, you're saying that that you feel it'd be better to have them in dash or better to have them firing at each other?
He's
no.
saying better, right?
Maybe.
He's not sure. What is better?
So the dash, when you have them in the dash firing up the windshield, if they're all the way in that corner pocket, then you'll tend to get boundary reinforcement where certain frequencies are actually positively influenced, and you get a lot more energy at certain frequencies. So that's not necessarily a bad thing because your system could potentially have louder output potential. So,
okay, so it's using the corner of
like
the
a
shield,
horn.
the pillar, and the like dash as a fucking horn.
Yes,
and
that's what I was saying. Like, get it as far deep.
Yeah, you want them in there deep.
Well, what you're thinking, Steve, is slightly different. A lot of people used to want to get them as deep as possible because the further away from the listener, the smaller the difference in path length differential would be from left seat to right seat, or from the left speaker to the right speaker. It would be a very, very small difference.
What's the name of it? Oh man!
But that was before we had the ability to delay speakers and line them up in time. So now we have a lot more.
Okay, so here's a thing for you, Matt. Okay, so we're building custom dash pillar pods. Okay, and we're gonna point those speakers directly at the ears of the driver. And is it just based on distance from the listener? Does it make shit ass of a difference if this thing is 18 inches away and that's 50 inches away, or 30 inches away and equal distance added on 62 inches away, right? So it's like the same difference, but this one with reference of measurement, the ratio is different. Does the ratio come into? Is that a factor?
I would say if you have the ability to actually delay the speakers using a DSP, then probably not. Probably wouldn't make a big enough difference.
It wouldn't make a difference. There wouldn't more likely be phase issues where you'd want multiple all pass filters or some wild shit like that.
Not necessarily. It depends on the shape of the vehicle. There's a lot more that goes into that. But if you didn't have a DSP, then the closer the path length differential is, the better.
Yes, we definitely have a DSP. Everybody has a DSP. I mean, after you were on this episode, the previous episode you were on, everybody in here bought a DSP that didn't already have one.
Dude, I have
I'm talking to our 40, 60 people that we have that watch the show. They're always on here. And everybody already bought a DSP, and half of them that already had a DSP already bought a JL DSP. I bought a fucking goddamn Max, and I'm pretty sure a couple people on here are like, I want to buy a Max. I'll buy a Max.
Right. So if we can show, I think one thing to your point, Bobby, would be so when you said on axis, like you're putting them on the
I was trying to. The reason why I said that is I was taking all other variables out of the equation because I was trying to figure out whether there was, what brings it into my mind is like my Sprinter van, right? Yeah.
So your Sprinter van has the best center image I've ever heard, period.
Yeah.
Because it only has a center speaker firing up.
Perfect.
Dude, it tricked the shit out of me for like 30 seconds.
Yeah, but I want to build an SQ system in my Sprinter. The owner Audio Dynamics, he has the Sprinter van that he drives all over the country, and that thing sounds fucking amazing. I mean, it's fucking beautiful. It's one of the best sounding vehicles I've ever been in, and it sounds really good in the driver's seat, and it sounds like shit in the passenger seat. And I sat there a lot.
Like tonality wise, doesn't sound good, or just
no? It sounds really good, but there's a fucking speaker screaming in my face. Well, he listens to it really loud.
Must be a physical thing. I mean, yeah, probably.
The right channel's louder than the left because it's fucking 70 inches away from your face.
Band's really. That's a physical thing.
Yeah, I mean, and you're in the driver's seat, and you're like, oh, this is amazing. You're in the passenger seat, and you're like, that's really loud.
Well, for something like that, Matt, in a vehicle that size. If you want to do a 2-seat tune, how do you do that? Do you put the mics in the middle? Or are you putting the mics?
You make sure you have a really bitchin' center channel.
You spread the mics apart. You put some mics in the passenger driver's seat with the he explained it. I wish Scott was on here. Scott does a ton of them.
So yeah, Scott does do a lot of them, but there's something that has to be made very clear. A lot of people are looking for a multi-seat audio experience that's good for both the driver and the passenger.
But that's easy if it's kind of quiet. But if you want it to be loud as fuck, it gets far more challenging.
Well, right? We can make it loud too. That's not too difficult. The issue is that you can only optimize time to one point in space. Physics tells us you can't have both the sub delayed to the driver's seat and the passenger seat perfectly for both seats, right?
Well, what if the sub's right in the middle and the back?
We'll come back to this, Blake.
You can get it close, and it can sound decent for both people. But you have left speakers, you have right speakers, you have a subwoofer. You can only optimize all those speakers to one point. So you can either pick a point and make it a single seat tune, which will sound incredible, or you can compromise and do a 2-seat tune, and it can sound decent for both seats, but it'll never be as good as the single seat. So with that said, there's a couple of different ways you could do this. One, stereo is 2-channel, right? So left and right. So what's the center?
The center.
Mono. The sum of the two.
Right? Mono. And if you have mono center, now your left stage is in the middle and your right stage is in the middle, and it collapses everything. It's not great. Right? So technically what you'd want is what's called a up mixer, which takes a 2-channel signal and it upmixes it to a multi-channel signal. So 3 or more channels, right? Does that make sense so far?
Kinda, yes.
You
Okay.
lost
So
me
if
at
you
up
How
have-
does it do that? How does it do that? What is the
Yeah, how the
submixer
fuck's
doing?
that happen?
So usually
is
what
it?
happens is it's some sort of audio analyzer that looks
So
at
you're
the
a
left
wizard.
and the sort of. It looks at the left signal and the right signal, and it determines what's common between left and right. And anything that's common information, it extracts that and then sends that to a center. So now you have a dedicated left, which is only left, a center, which is only common, and then a right, which is only right. So now it's a 3-channel. Now
I
they
see.
can mix that in very different ways, right? They can manipulate that sound. It could be frequency based. It could be left right based. There's a lot of things they could do, but keep in mind the further you go down the upmix path, the less it's like the original recording. It's no longer the original recording that the artist intended for you to hear. So with that said, you can do a 2-seat tune. You can get there and get really good results, but what are you looking for? What do you want out of this 2-seat tune? That would be my question.
Okay, you reminded me of something, Matt, and I want to see if you can think that. Tell me what you think of this. Okay, I had no working knowledge of shit. Remind you, I was like 19 years old. I was working very briefly at a shop in San Jose, California, called Audio Mobile, and they were building this incredibly high-end audio system in 19. I don't know. I was 19, so it was like 90 fucking 4 or something.
Right.
And this guy spent like $10,000 on this audio system. That'd be like somebody spending like $35,000 on their audio system now. Okay. So,
Right.
and it was beautiful and it was super badass. And while I was helping and watching these guys work on this build, I was learning a whole lot of stuff. But they had a center channel in this build. And what they did is they took the negative from the right channel and the positive from the left channel. And they just tagged those two wires and fed that to the center channel. What the fuck would that do?
So I think what you're thinking of is very similar to what they probably actually did, which is they probably did something where they take the input signals and they mix them like left minus right,
Nope.
right minus
No.
left. No,
I literally watched them run these wires.
Okay, so left positive, right negative.
No, they were at the amp and there were tag wires. And I was like, what the fuck is that? And they said, we're doing this. And I went, really? And they said, yeah, that feeds the center channel. For sure. This was the thing they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were doing it goofy.
I mean, if you take left positive and right negative, it's almost like bridging an amplifier, right? So you would just get mono. I mean, if that's what they were in fact doing.
Well, it wouldn't play everything that wasn't shared between the two. The speaker would just kind of
see
move
your point.
around without making any sound.
Yeah,
That's
I see
what the
your
guy
point.
said to me.
Yeah, it would only play anything that happens at the same time
In both, in
on
both. So it
positive
was
and negative. Right.
I'll tell
Yeah,
you.
so they
when
were
they
doing
turned-
differential. It was doing what we were talking about in the last ASQS. Differential left minus right, left minus right, right minus left, at like 5 to 95% or something. Like y'all were playing around with it a lot.
They
Yeah,
had a really wild. The most crazy thing about it is they had a like double pole, double throw potentiometer on a single knob on it.
Oh, so they were
adjust it.
adjusting how much of each was.
No, it was one knob potentiometer adjusting both signals. Supposed to be the same at the same time, so they could level it on its own
That makes sense.
with reference to everything else.
Dude,
I mean,
people
this
have been
is
wilding
like
out for a long time.
Early mid 90s, and it was an incredibly high end. It was a power acoustic. No, not power acoustic. I'm sorry, acoustic power reference, and they had gold plated emblems on the amps that had PR. They were beautiful amplifiers, but it was the company Acoustic that was kind of a cheaper brand, and they had this crazy product, and they had these amps. Anyway, but it was a beautiful build. I mean, they were doing all sorts of fiberglass work. This is long before people were getting into fiberglass really heavy. And they had beautiful door panels, and it was a fucking badass build. And then the owner of the shop was a total fucking slimy sleaze bag, and the kid that had the build was a drug dealer or some motherfucker. But the build was fucking sick, and the guys working on it were really good. So, but I mean, there was no processors.
Right.
Yeah. It sounds like just some old school shit that they were trying.
I mean, okay, tweaking. Like maybe I'm the foremost expert on that weird bullshit now because those guys are probably fucking dead that did that shit.
No, you are definitely the expert on that currently.
But I mean, so the speaker would only play if you did that. Right. It would only actually produce sound that was shared by both. Otherwise, the speaker would be moving around doing weird shit and looking weird, but it wouldn't make any sound out of it, right?
I would think so. It's hard to say because the way that
I haven't looked into mixers or
some amplifiers have positive legs and some had but back then it may have been common ground. So
that wouldn't have been really those amps were common ground. I mean, that was
okay, gotcha.
No, we can.
That wasn't a common ground amp thing.
At some point, we can get Scott in here. He does a bunch of 2-seat tuning with Max. Like
that would be really cool.
To
learn that, I thought of that. We were talking center channels. Yeah. We were talking, and I went, "Fuck, man! I saw this and I learned this, and I've never once done it." There you go. Those are the amplifiers that were in that thing. Wow. Now that DR is gold plated.
Yeah, that's fancy.
And I think he had 2. I think he had 2 of those, and then a 2-channel that was running 2 Kicker Comp 10s in a sealed tire well box.
Damn.
Oh yeah,
very interesting.
Good stuff.
It was very fancy shit. It was super duper expensive, and the guys that had they were like, "This is the only build that we sold this shit on." Another incredibly great sounding vehicle that had that didn't even have those amps in it. It had the regular acoustic amps in it. Was the sales rep, and he had a Typhoon. It was the first Typhoon I'd ever seen. And it was all white. It was brand new, and it was all white. And it had 2 10s and 1 8 in it for the subsystem.
Well, speaking of Typhoons, the Typhoon, that's the it's not the truck.
GMC 4.3 liter with a turbo.
Is that the truck
or the Blazer?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's the SUV.
Cyclone's the truck. The Blazer's the Typhoon.
At Slam,
it was fucking beautiful. It was a brand new truck, and I remember the guy was like putting his hand on the window. He's like, you could feel the pressure through the window, and I was like, put your hand on my window, you're gonna like have a numb elbow. I was like, I got 412s in my car. I'll dominate this shit. What are you talking about?
So at Slam, was it last year that you heard the truck for the first time?
Yes.
There was a Cyclone, an SQ built Cyclone that was in the same parking lot with me. It was gorgeous. It had a big flame paint job on it. It was nice. It was nice.
What? Flame?
Yeah, it was like a blue, had a bunch of blue flames on it.
Okay.
Is that the one that has the wall?
I lost flame paint jobs in like 2004. They just fell off of and I'll tell you what, I can draw flames really good. Like I draw some really bitchin' flames, but I just don't think they're that fucking cool.
So I'm gonna pull mine up real quick before I see Matt got his finally pulled up.
No, mine's still not working, but I'll do the target thing.
So this is my truck, like to a T.
Can you hide the live data? Can you hide the live data so it's not confusing?
Yeah.
Hide that live data, bro.
Yeah. So this is my truck. Let me clear off some of these that we're not using. It's fucking.
Ray Taylor said, "What have I missed?"
My guy.
We talked about BBC a little bit.
We did talk about a bunch of BBC.
Talked about elephant taint. And
Yes, that's
scrotum.
right. The elephant foreskin,
Yeah.
inner elephant foreskin lined aeroports for SPL.
Stack fab airports. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, I mean,
didn't
it
see
wouldn't
the-
matter if it's stack fab. It's just got to be reinforced really well because like the those thermoformed flare ports flex hella bad and cause hella resonance and sound like shit if you don't reinforce them correctly. But as long as it's reinforced and it's upholstered with the inside of an elephant's foreskin, it should be the loudest thing possible.
I guess I should have.
For real. For sure.
I need to go do another. I'm putting 8s on the truck this weekend, so I'll pull better data so I can show the correlation between the mid bases right here. So you see how I have a dip on this.
You know what I have to say. I bet it's the same thing that I have a problem with, that Colt has a problem with. Is I look at this and I'm like, it's so pretty. And then I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And I'm like, I don't know. And I start studying it and I'm like, it's so pretty. And I'm like, fuck. All right, circle back. Get your shit together. It's really cool looking. Nothing looks this cool.
It's very cool looking. Well, I should have pulled the individual speaker data for the phase to show the left and right mid bass phase and how there's a dip here and a dip on this other driver. Oh God. But when they sum, the dips go away. But if I didn't have accurate phase, those dips would probably get worse because of where they're at in relation to each other.
Right. So basically, Drew was able to use phase to optimize the interaction at those frequencies, which got him a good amount of summed energy when both play together.
Okay, so the vehicle was causing its own lack of a specific frequency.
Yep.
Like
these are nulls that the truck causes.
So you did that with phase.
Okay, yeah, so those are nulls that the truck caused. But once both drivers were playing, the truck didn't cause that null anymore.
Not as bad, but you still see the purple.
I mean, you see a little tiny dip there.
It's
right?
it's still happening. It's just
that
he had enough energy there to kind of make up for a lot of that and make it smooth. It's still the reflection is still causing cancellation at that frequency. He was able to just optimize speakers at that frequency to do the best that they can in that vehicle.
So if he went in and messed with the EQ just a little bit more, would he be able to completely?
He could probably push the EQ up, but keep in mind that'll make the speaker. It could make the speaker go into distress depending on how much energy you force it to do. Right,
Steven, that's like the very first thing you do when you put a max in a vehicle as you start tuning. That's number one.
So, Steve, you could see that Drew's his phase traces. You see the yellow is the subwoofer, and that falls right into the purple, which is his mid bass. And then the purple falls right into the red, which is his mid range. And towards the top end, the red it kind of goes right into the green. So it's a
whole bunch of reds and greens, Matt. And how the fuck do you know what those are?
Because they're frequency specific. The sub is yellow. So look at the left-hand side, it stops playing at 100 hertz. You know it's
okay, but I mean, like, where is it showing me? I mean, okay, there's a lot of reds and purples though, and there's red and purple and
right. So you
turned a bunch of shit off, and now it's
sorry. I zoomed in. So what you want to focus on for phase is the crossover point where the speakers hand off frequencies. My mid range and my tweeter look my mid range and my sub look really good. Mid bass and mid range look really good. So they cross over right here in this area, and you can see that they are very much.
So that's where your like overlap is or whatever.
Yeah, they have the same angle and the same amount of lines.
So they're playing the same.
How come
frequency?
How come at the end it doesn't finish in one color like it starts?
Because the mid bass
purple goes away. Because there's no more frequencies from the mid basses at that point.
No. Well, before what it showed, the other graph, it showed like towards the end there was two colors. No, I guess it does just finish with one. color?
These?
Yeah, it does finish with 1.
So
Okay, no, I just didn't see it far enough.
yeah,
down,
Drew,
I
show
guess.
those targets real quick. Hide the live data or the captured data and just show the target. So the target is the ideal system, right? It's perfect in every way. So
Okay.
here, the yellow is the shape of the entire system playing. So if we hide the yellow, now you can see the gray, which the gray is actually the mid-range. The green is the mid-base, and then the sub is the purple. So they transfer straight into one another. It's a continuation of the exact same phase
100%.
response.
Yeah,
Okay,
I totally understand that.
So what's red that we're seeing here?
On the top graph,
Yes.
that would be Drew's mid-range.
So,
It's
Okay, so red
These
is
reds,
so
that,
it's that's the same speaker playing across all of these bands.
Yep.
Of frequency.
Yeah, if you look on the bottom graph and you look at the gray target, you can see that the gray target has the same bandwidth as the red phase trace.
Okay. Now I'm picking it up. Okay. That's a lot.
well, the fact that,
Yeah.
that like you these are actually fantastic phase traces that Drew's captured here. They're really good because you can actually see how they just stack right into the next speaker. Now, Drew, just for the heck of it,
Yeah, because something that's really bad, you wouldn't be able to point out that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Drew, on the phase trace, go to octave smoothing. So there's octave smoothing. So it's very similar. It's just more anechoic with less reflective energy. And you can see the green hands off to the red, which hands off to the purple, and purple hands off to the yellow. Now, if you go to 148 smoothing, which includes all the reflections in the truck, now you can see the high frequency gets very chaotic and very hard to read. And that's why we give you that control so that you can look at all of the data. You can see everything you want to see. But
yeah, you couldn't tune with that 148, but that 1/6 is pretty reasonable.
Right.
And the one and the whatever the 100% smoothing or whatever the fuck he called it, the octave smoothing, that makes it real clear.
Yeah,
so
that's not
if
even
you're
really
good
usable
with
for
octave
training.
smoothing, you're doing pretty good. If you're doing with 1/3 or 1/6, you're kind of kicking ass.
So for what y'all are doing, I wouldn't use anything less than 1/6. Going down to 1/3 or octave, it's not enough data.
Yeah. Okay.
So what's interesting though, what you can learn from that is like how real is this issue? If you're at 1/12 smoothing and you have this issue, and then you go to 1/6 and the issue disappears, it's not a very big issue. It's not a hard reflection. But if you go to 1/6, 1/3, and it's still there, then you know it's very, very real. It's
So Steven, if the speaker was wired backwards and you somehow got beyond this point, which is the very first thing you're doing in tuning, you need to go back and restart anyway. But the phase, if you shift it out of phase while you're on the phase screen, if you click polarity and you flip it, the lines will just go the other direction, basically.
Drew, you can show it. Go back to your targets on the phase graph.
Oh, I can I? You're right.
Yeah.
You're
now,
right. Yeah.
hide your capture. Yep, you got it. You got it.
And then flip polarity.
There you go. So now you can see that it's directly in between the other traces. It's no longer part of the. It's no longer aligned with the initial trace.
It's 180 out of everything else.
So this is a good distinction here, Drew, because a lot of people think that phase and polarity are interchangeable, and
they're not.
They're very, very
I
different.
used to think that they were the same thing as well, but polarity and phase are completely different.
Right. Polarity affects phase, but it's not phase. It's more of direction. So
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that we still have 25 people watching because this is some higher level stuff. But I know a lot of people really enjoy watching stuff like this.
I wish Matt's screen would work because he could definitely.
Wait a second. Hold on a second. It's back. It was the internet. The internet went out, and now it's back. Let me. Hold on a second, brother.
Blames it on the internet.
It was.
I just have to wish. I just have to wish it into existence.
So
yeah, give us a little crash course.
I'm just trying
Like
to
I know we're gonna see so much more DSP use in our SPL
which we should.
arena now.
I mean,
And
I've had a DSP in every SPL demo vehicle I've ever had. Period.
well, I hope that people, because our side a different lens looking at it, maybe
Mhm.
we're able. Our guys, someone finds a little something.
Oh no, I mean,
that,
I feel like we're definitely.
there's some gains I think we're gonna see.
Oh,
here.
absolutely. I mean, I feel like as our little group right here, I mean, we're exposing a lot of the people to DSP and what it can do, and what proper tuning can do for your system. Like anyone, my biggest one is the owner of Rogue Audio. They do pro audio stuff, this and that. He's heard all of Jonathan Price's builds forever. His most recent build, when I had it and I tuned it with a max pair of tweaks. I'm talking about mids and highs, not subs, because we're not done with that. But he said the mids and highs have never, ever, sounded as good as it does right this second. And it's been built by how many shops over how many years? And it's never sounded as good as it does now.
Yeah, no one takes the time to tune it. I mean, it's really what it comes down to.
The Green Monster has had 2 DSPs in it from the word go. And the the tweeter, I mean the whole front stage of this thing is 4 B2 CDR horns and 4 3-inch mids, and then like a Pioneer 8 in each door, and I don't know if the Memphis 5 1/4 and the 2 tweeters are doing anything. I know the tweeters are blown at one point. It actually sounds pretty bitchin' just on that.
Yep.
Because I took a little bit of time and I actually tuned the DSP. I threw the mic in there and was like, make it flat. And then I knocked down 2,500 hertz and I was
BBC'd
good.
it. You BBC'd it. Hell yeah.
Let's see what my.
Yeah, I BBC'd that shit. All the way.
Dude,
That's
I'm
my
gonna make
EQing
stickers now. BBC curve.
on my left
BBC
mid range.
It's like little fat white dude with a beard. BBC it. People are like, okay, little bottom.
That is the EQing on that driver.
Wearing that, and you're walking around with Byron at fucking Slamology. You're like, get away from me, bro.
Actually, I'll make a shirt that just says BBC with an arrow, and I'll always make sure I stand on one side of
You're a
Byron.
white dude.
Mm-hmm.
It's always just going to point at Byron, no matter where I'm standing.
It's just got a sensor in it, and the arrow follows him around.
So let me see.
That would be pretty sick.
Oh my god, fucking dead.
I could do that. We could definitely put a little wheel in there. I could make something happen.
I want to make shirts that say "Go fix your engine noise" and wear those around fucking Slamology. People be mad as fuck,
Dude. I'd
Like,
And
people
stickers.
walk
Then
by all
every time
fucking-
you get in a car that has an engine noise, you give them a sticker too.
just slap a sticker in the
Fix
middle of
your
their
shit.
dash. Congratulations. Fuck. Stick it in my own goddamn truck.
Drew, I know what you're trying to do right now, but this thing could shut off at any minute.
Oh
It should.
no. What's going on? What are you trying to do?
So that's
Whatever
my
you
screen.
want to do. So right now we have a vehicle connected to the cart. So effectively it's a Dodge Charger with a C7 3-way front stage and a W7 in the rear. And we can do whatever you want. So what do you want to see? That's
So let's show Steven's
Okay.
been asking about polarity. Let's show him what polarity looks like on in real time.
Okay.
Like
Okay, cool. So you're gonna fuck up the phase on one of those things?
polarity.
The polarity.
Yeah. So this
Whatever.
is a real vehicle, like a real playing vehicle, basically.
So which speaker do you want to see?
A dramatic one, mid bass.
A 3-inch.
Oh,
We'll,
3
we'll
inch.
do a subwoofer and a mid bass. How's that? So this
I
is
thought
actually
I can do whatever I want.
this. Oh, what did you say? I'm sorry.
3.5.
3.5.
No,
You
go
do
ahead.
3.5. Drew said do a dramatic one, so that's why.
Yeah, I would say dramatic because the phase
Okay, so
shifts.
the reason why I said a 3-inch is Steven is dead sure that his 3-inch in his car are not, the polarity is not correct on what's listed in them. And
Gotcha.
he probably isn't wrong.
Okay.
Is he close to you?
Yes.
So you'll be able to put the max in his vehicle?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so
Okay.
we can show you what tweeter / mid range being out of polarity look like in both
All right.
lit
So
IR and
I'm gonna be building him a box for his subwoofers probably in a couple of weeks. So after we put the subs in, then we'll do all that.
gotcha. So before we start looking at phase, remember we talked about that phase is relative to something. It's relative to a certain time or another speaker, right? So if we were to just look at phase with no reference, if we were to just look at blindly, what is the phase response, right? You would see something like this. It's very, very chaotic and hard to understand because there's no reference right now. We're just looking at time. We don't know when time started. So we have to
If there's only one speaker playing and it's out of phase, it's in phase. It doesn't fucking matter.
Right. But we have to define what time we want to look at. Does that make sense? So right now, if we have to start with impulse response. Okay. So I'm going to go to impulse response. We have a couple different graphs here that all have impulse response, but we're going to use what's called linear impulse response. And if I zoom out on this graph, the first thing you're going to notice, the graph is milliseconds on the x-axis, and then on the y-axis is amplitude. How loud?
Do you remember when I was playing that very weird pink noise in the Raiden truck? And it was psh, 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 psh,
yes,
periodic pink noise.
Periodic pink noise.
So that initial impulse of sound is that spike you see on screen.
Okay,
yeah, we
cool.
we can lock on to the periodic noise because the settings in tune are optimized for that length of time. And
because
actually
max is the reference, it's playing the signal. It knows when it sent the signal.
Right. So it sent the signal right here in the middle. You see where it says 0.00? So that's when time started. It left max. It went into the factory radio or whatever radio's in the car. Then it went to the amplifier. Then it went from the amplifier to the speaker, and then from the speaker through the air to the microphone. Okay, so all of that time happened, and our speaker showed up over here at 55 milliseconds later. Okay, so all of those devices and the time of flight added up to 55 milliseconds. So we just need to look at where the time of the speaker actually started playing. Does that make sense?
Hey, real quick. Yeah. I'm sorry to side note the fuck out of this.
It's all right.
What's the percentage of time of flight or the speed of sound rather to electronic signal ratio roughly in that 55 milliseconds?
Well, there's a bunch of different electronics. There's the radio, possibly some sort of integration device, then the amplifier on top of that. So it's probably more latency than it is time of flight. Keep in mind, yeah, keep in mind time of flight is about 1 millisecond. I think it's about a foot a millisecond is a good rule of thumb.
Well, electronics goes the speed of light, and sound goes 786 miles an hour.
The speed of light, but the processing,
the processing takes longer.
Processing takes longer.
Yeah, like if there's
go ahead. I can actually show an example. Whenever we get on this, I can show an example of. I have a 3 milliseconds of processing delay on my drivers in this room versus the sub that does not have any processing on it. These are 3 milliseconds delayed. Well, the
3 milliseconds versus 55 milliseconds.
Yeah,
sounds like time of flight is far higher.
No, because imagine in this car, the mics were in the driver's seat and the speakers within 2 feet or 2 to 3 feet. So it should only have about 3 milliseconds of latency. But again, you got
so
the other 52 milliseconds are coming from the processing and everything else.
Right.
And I might have explained that poorly. I might have explained that poorly because just ignore what I said. I'll have to pull data.
Well, I mean,
I felt like now processing. I have to acknowledge that there's a chip in there that's doing a bunch of math for us for a minute, rather than it just being this signal going the speed of light through this electronic circuitry.
But there's always going to be processing and everything, which in the end, it doesn't really matter,
Right.
because
There's a
we're gonna
processor
correct
that's
for it.
doing math before it sends its signal out.
And
So-
we're going to correct for it. So
Not only is there a
Yeah.
chip, not only is there a DSP processor, there's an ADC, an analog to digital conversion. Then it goes to the DSP. Then there's a DAC, a digital to analog conversion. So there's all these conversions happening at before and after the chip in every single device.
Multiple gizmos in there that are computing. That's the part that my brain wasn't taking into consideration.
So a good way to visualize this would be, let me see. I think I can show you here. So let me
I
just.
think that's one of those things that I really wouldn't even. I mean,
no.
I just was curious. I was just curious.
It
wasn't something I was concerned about with the end result at all. I just wasn't sure.
Okay.
Well, this is just to get us that baseline start.
And Frank,
time, like you're
feel
saying.
free to message me if you get any tweet questions.
It uses that to base everything off of for the phase.
As an example, this is the signal generator. It starts at 0 and it ends at 0. It's happening instantly. That's the speed of sound. Now, if I change that to actually measure the loop back, which is it goes through the DAC, the digital to analog converter, and then out of max. Let's see how much later that arrives.
Very cool.
That's all the way over here.
Holy shit.
200 milliseconds? Is that what that says?
Yep.
Well, then how the fuck is it only goddamn 55 milliseconds when you see the sound?
That's just that. Again, the latency doesn't matter because we can account for that.
Because we're going to adjust for it anyway. But I just wanted to know how long it took for it to, do what it was told to do when it was told to do it.
I've seen some extremely long latencies, like over 300 milliseconds, and I've also seen some really short ones. The latency doesn't matter unless you're just interested in learning about why it's taking the time it does.
Yeah, I was just curious. That's all. That was. I hope I'm not fucking everybody up. I just was like,
no,
how long does it take to go? Like, how much of that is speed of sound and how much of that is speed of light travel time? But it's not just speed of light. It's how long it takes a fucking computer to figure out how to shit the correct information out.
Yep. So what we're going to do is we're going to zoom into this signal so that we can actually see where it starts. So I'm just going to use my zoom tool and I'm just going to zoom in here and look at just the area I want to see. And you can see it's noise, 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 noise. And then boom, there's the initial signal right here. So it starts at about 56 milliseconds. So now you saw the phase before, very chaotic with like all the wiggles and right. So if I set that as my reference, so if I just type in 56.04 into my reference delay field at the top, and then I go back to the center of the graph, you could now see the 0.00 is actually gone. And our new reference delay is the 0 point on the graph. We've now excluded all of that latency out of we're not looking at latency anymore.
Right. Yeah.
So now if we go back to phase, now
is this something you have to do? And is this something you have to do in every vehicle before you start?
Yes. Well,
Well,
before you start, meaning before you start tuning?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So the first step of the tuning process is aligning
to figure out the latency. Or
whatever, not figure out the latency, but delay all the speakers so they arrive at the same time. It would be replacing the step of the tape measure. You'd no longer be using a tape measure to enter distances. You would just use impulse response to actually measure time directly.
But you'd know almost immediately if anything was out of phase. So while you're doing the delay, you'd also go, that shit's way the fuck out of phase.
Show him NIR, but
polarity.
Flip the next. Flip the polarity of the speaker.
Pretend right that now, sometimes installers don't understand that red and black mean positive and negative.
So this is what it looks like.
So right here,
my installers don't normally, but I have also seen. I've actually had a speaker in my hand, and I've been like, this motherfucker's polarity is backwards, and positive was negative and negative was positive.
I have a story about the rating that I'll go over here in a second after he shows what this looks like. This is how I found it in the racing truck.
So you can see that the initial signal goes in an upward direction. If I flip polarity on this channel, it now goes in a downward direction.
Right.
So that's telling you the polarity of the speaker, relative polarity of any speaker.
So you just want them all going in the same direction.
Yep.
So
otherwise shit sounds really fucked up.
So do you remember how I had Colt flip the polarity of the whole left pillar?
Yeah.
That's why the entire left pillar was, whether it be the amplifier or just the shape of the truck,
the whole left pillar of the 3-inch speakers
was 100%.
All of them were
down when everything else went
they
up.
were wired incorrectly, or the speakers were. I'm thinking that the whole left pillar was wired incorrectly.
It's a possibility.
I think
on big builds like that, bro. Who knows? But that's why
I think the technician that was wiring them at like 2 a.m.
Yeah. But that's why
made them a mirror image, is what I'm pretty sure he did.
That's why tools like the Max are so great. Like I was able to find that in the first 30 seconds of having everything working in the truck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Steven, so you could see when Bobby puts the Max in your truck, if you can play individual, so you'll have to be able to play individual speakers. That's gonna be the only. Well, yeah, or I guess you have to be able to play individual
speakers. You'll want to if you can, but if not, if they're all linked to a single channel, you just want to verify before you start.
So you're going to be taking.
And that's reasonable to check, Steven. So we can do that before we do the tune. Actually, we will have to pull a door panel apart.
You actually wouldn't even have to unhook all of them. You would just need to take one microphone and put it right up to the cone of the speaker and get as close as possible. So it's only measuring that one speaker and not
right.
Hey, Steven, where's your crossover at? Is it in the door or is it elsewhere? Because if it's not in the door, then you can just unhook the speakers from the crossover and then just leave the play one at a time that way.
And also, if you were going to
the other thing you could do really simply, Steven, is you could switch the phase at the crossover, and if it sounds way fucking better, then it was out of phase. And if it sounds like super shit, then it was totally in phase and everything was fine.
But when you
his amp rack removes pretty quickly. You'll know
immediately.
Yeah, you'll know right away if it was right or wrong.
If you're going to test these things, like as far as like these individual speakers, there would be a different way that I would measure the polarity, not using the impulse response. I would actually look at it on the scope. So like I could go into the scope graph on Tune, and I can actually look at I can play a ramp down signal. So it's literally just a pop. So it'll be like pop, pop, just like you'd hear with a polarity tester. But instead of using a polarity tester, which sometimes gives you intermittent results, you can look and verify the actual measured signal right on the graph.
Fancy people stuff.
Yeah.
See, this is the side of it that I haven't even started on that, and it can do so much, bro.
So just for Steve's sake, Steve, I know you were asking. You said, is this something you'd have to do every time you begin a tune? I just want to show you real quick how quickly you can go through the impulse response stuff and checking polarities once you're familiar with it. And obviously, yes, I'm familiar with it. I've been doing this a long time, but Drew can do this basically just as fast as I can.
Yep. I can do a full I can delete the tune in my truck, tune both amps fully from nothing to a 220 plus IASQS scoring truck, 30 minutes flat.
So I'm going to start at the default setting.
But
so
that's using JL processor with the Max, because as you see, they integrate into the exact same software, because JL's software team is astounding.
So what I'm going to do here,
Steven, did you verify that the initial pop was also down or also up with your mid that you were referencing to, and also through your crossover? So if you're using and I probably wouldn't use a 9-volt battery, not on your tweeter, but a 9-volt on your mid and your
probably not going to hear or see the tweeter moving if you can.
Yeah, you're not going to hear that. I just wouldn't. And it seems
just wait till Bobby puts the Max in it.
What's that?
So wait till
the
Bobby
tweeter's
puts the Max
probably fine.
Well, because you're not going to be able to hear. Well, you can hear tweeter phase, but it's so you can't. We can. Tweeter polarity
You're like,
doesn't
something's
matter
weird,
nearly as
but
much.
I wouldn't worry about the tweeters now. I would say I would go through the crossover with the 12 volt and be looking at the 6 and the 3. And if they do the same thing, everybody's in phase. If they don't do the same thing, your
but
shit's all
depending
fucked
on
up.
how well the crossover is designed, there could be a phase issue in the crossover that isn't polarity related.
Let Matt show us what he's going to show us.
I'll show you that real quick.
Stop talking.
All right, so
Matt's used to dealing with that because
he keeps trying to show something, and then let's go.
Drew, you want to time me?
So grumpy, Steve.
Oh, you
he's, let him explain stuff, cut him off.
So this is gonna be something for Bobby and for other people watching to see how long it takes to do a proper tune. Like this would be a proper tune.
Not even just proper tune, but just like
I'm
what
just
he was
doing
saying
IR.
about the just
Ready?
making sure that all these speakers
Tell me when.
and
Go.
Okay.
That was
So
blurry.
I'm switching to the impulse response graph. I'm playing my speaker. Here's my first signal. Now I'm going to zoom in on that signal, and I'm going to set that as my reference.
So he's setting every single speaker's time and polarity right now, all of them, to make sure they're all.
But this is obviously only if you have access to each speaker on its own, correct?
And really, if you're building a really badass SQ system, you should. But
no,
if you
but even for like Stevens, you
got
can
to the
do
point
left
where
and
you're
right
tuning
directly in time.
If you verified your phase correctly before you're tuning, then this should be very reasonable, and you'll know right away if there's a problem because you'll see a phase issue or a polarity
that's kind of
issue.
what you want.
Look at that.
This is going to show the phase and polarity issues.
It shows polarity.
It's going to show a polarity issue right away.
Yeah, but
as he gets
you don't
each
have
one.
to have
if it doesn't go up first,
speaker control. Like for Steven's truck, he can do the whole left side time and the whole right side time and subwoofer time using these exact same.
How many speakers is this right now, Matt? That you're doing?
This is a full 3-way front stage plus a sub. So now I'm delaying the signals in time. So you'll see when I click on it, it moves back to the reference position. So I'm putting my cursor. I'm using hotkeys right now because I could do it faster with, pressing the keyboard shortcuts. But you can also use tools like the delay finder. So find delay, insert delta, and it'll insert the delta for you.
As you see the sound move backwards on that graph, that's the delay being put into the DSP.
Insert delta. So that's it. I'm done. What's that? 1 minute and 51 seconds. I
spent that long looking for a tape measure.
Yeah, I delayed all the speakers in the system and checked all the polarities in 1 minute and 50 seconds. So
that last part when it was showing all the sound waves to the right of your line, is that basically like the end result of everything together?
They're all lined up with 58.53. Yeah. So if I play everything, you'll see this will just keep getting bigger.
So, Steve, what you're seeing after that initial impulse is reflections. It's reflective energy in the vehicle.
Yep, that's
exactly. But basically what you did was it took all of the information from each speaker and it moved them, time delayed them, so that they all matched up together starting at this 55.
Right, and to be clear, it didn't do it. I did it. All this did was just show me where it's happening, and I actually
put the delay
into the DSP, which is right here.
So normally you would have to get a tape measure from like your nose out to your speaker.
Right.
Yeah, get the little calculator.
But this thing is telling you, it's giving you the values to put in each one of those boxes.
Yep. So if you had a separate brand DSP, you would just take the data you're getting from that top screen
and put it in the DSP.
Yeah,
so this is what you would do if you had a different DSP. You would put your cursor up on the screen and look at the very top where it says the difference in the information display. It says negative 2.33, or you could just click on the delay field on your other DSP and just start adding delay and just walk it right back to the reference position.
I see.
So, Steven, if it was out of polarity, the initial impulse would go the opposite direction of all the other ones. Phase, if there's a phase issue in the crossover, that's something different.
Yeah. So you can see how I just added delay until it walked right into position.
So on like one of those crossovers, Drew or Matt, when you do the little phase switch, says 180 degrees. Is that changing the polarity, or is it
It's
actually
changing polarity.
Okay? So it should say polarity. It shouldn't say 180 phase on it.
Correct. A
switches.
lot of manufacturers actually interchange them as well, which is wrong, and that's
Right.
why so many people, say
confused.
phase when in reality it should be polarity. Now, I wanted to also show you the scope function
Oh, yeah, I
and
wanna
what
see
you guys
scope.
were talking about. So I'm going to play the ramp down signal, which is one of the files that's included when you download Tune. So it's the speaker polarity pulse, so pulse 48K. So now if I play that signal, first I'm going to look at the actual signal generator. So like the signal that's actually coming from Tune. I'm going to show you what that looks like first. So you have an idea of what you're looking at. Okay, so this is the actual signal coming from the signal generator. So it goes up and then it holds for a second and then it ramps downward. This is called a ramp down signal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I see it.
I can actually use triggering on the scope and I can lock it on to show up at a very at a certain period of time. So I'm going to set this up so we can look at a speaker in the same way. So this is signal generator. So now let's look at a mic input. So I'm going to actually look at a single microphone, not all 5. So I'm going to look at mic 3. Okay, so now you can see that the signal from the microphone actually does look different, right? So if I zoom in on that signal, and again, I'm just using keyboard shortcuts for this. You can see that the initial input, the initial signal goes in an upward direction. And if we were to flip the polarity of this signal, it would then go downward.
So the scope is still sending the signal to go up, but the speaker's physically moving backwards.
Yep. So that kind of just shows the difference between the signal that's being generated from Tune versus the signal that we're looking at from the speaker. So
why is this so different? I mean,
because
do you want them to be the same?
Well, a speaker can't only go one direction. It can't only go out. It has to move back, right? The suspension requires it. Once it goes out, it's going to come back and it's going to pass that initial 0 point just because of the, once an energy's in motion, it stays in motion. So it's going to move back, then it's going to go forward until it settles back at where it stops. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, the signal that it's generating, like, is that like a tone or something? Basically,
it's a pop.
What it's playing?
It's a pop, pop, pop.
Okay.
Pop. It's an outward polarity pop. So because that signal doesn't go downward, any motion where the speaker actually goes in is just a result of the initial energy. It's not part of the original signal. So all that matters is not how close it is to the original signal. It's just that if the original signal goes up, the speaker should also go up. And if it doesn't, then your polarity's wrong.
I see.
But you can literally do all this with Max. You can actually do this with Tune without Max if you have just a USB mic or an XLR mic.
I guess we should have mentioned that. A lot of these features are available to use in Tune with just a regular USB mic.
Right. And that's the free software people can
Tune's free. Yep. Okay. Tune's free. So let me address William's question, and then Matt, let's show them the magic of auto tune. Auto set EQ.
EQ. Okay.
So if an amplifier is a knob for phase and not a switch for phase, is the knob actually phase where the switch is polarity? Yes. The knob is a lot of manufacturers do it differently. Some apply a total crossover over everything, which is just it's like an all pass filter, but it's over everything, adjusting phase, and then some add time delay, which also adjusts phase. There's no standard, unfortunately. But yes, a phase knob is actually adjusting phase, not polarity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, a phase knob.
If you adjust the phase to 180, you have now adjusted the polarity
No, you've still only adjusted phase, but you've just put it 180 out.
It depends though. Like for example, on the Fathom product that we make, we have a phase knob, and on that product, the phase knob works as it's a digital delay circuit. So when you turn that, you're actually delaying the waveform. But then other models,
but if you delay the form just right, it would eventually be
180 out of phase. Polarity is an electrical thing,
right? So
it's an electrical connection.
You didn't actually flip the direction. Like the direction isn't going to go now. It's not going to go in now. It's just 180 degrees later in time. It can be very confusing, but it's
so you could very easily flip that shit. No, you couldn't. If you're tuning with a max, it's going to show you that it's fucking out of polarity.
Right, but there's also a very easy way to see where you need delay versus where you need to flip polarity. When you're looking at the phase graph, you can see that for sure.
Now, because the dip down or the dip up.
This
right?
is extremely basic shit that people should totally have on top of. But some manufacturers that are mass producing products, sometimes some of their shit will be out of polarity.
It's
and
labeled
we have
backwards.
seen that a little bit with some products.
So I'm going to show
you what?
Not all manufacturers
not JL
care.
Other products that are far less expensive
Jerry,
than
one
JL.
Of the biggest things that I tell people about Max is real-time analysis. That's probably the biggest thing for me currently is everything's in real time. So where like with a single USB mic, you have to take an average. Like say you do a spatial average around your head with a single mic.
Like
you do that every time for every speaker, for every change. It's just long, and it takes you a very long time to pull just RTA data. Where this is real time, 5 mic average spatial of your whole head all at once in real time.
Yeah. So
given the 5 mics, it's basically the same as doing that.
Could you tune a fucking sound quality expert level, pro level, championship vehicle with a fucking USB mic? Yes, you fucking can, but it would take you far longer than it would with a Max. But is it a bunch of very simple, basic processes that are easier to understand? Yes. So if you understood that shit first, understanding a Max would be way easier. But if you're diving in, then
like I didn't know how to do phase with a single mic because you can do it. I didn't know how to do a bunch of stuff with a single mic. I learned it with Max, and I think
it doesn't seem too complicated. Like I mean,
it's not terribly complicated because your working knowledge of what's happening with sound is really high level, Steve. A lot of guys, a lot of people are going to be like, this is too fucking much.
It's a lot.
Yeah, you definitely have to have some knowledge with working with. At least you have to know what a lot of the stuff means.
Max also makes
there's a lot of terms that are
more simple because JL has spent the millions of dollars to develop this to make it simple. Which is,
the only one. The one I've used is the kicker
from
one.
You guys, the support that we're getting. Colt's like, I don't understand. How about this? And fucking 3-4 guys are like this. And there's tons of information. And that's really probably the biggest advantage to using the Max versus many other pieces of equipment, especially if you're talking about some USB mic, is that there's somebody on the other end that will answer your call or your message and give you the information you need to get through what the fuck you're doing.
I wouldn't doubt if you called them and you were just using the tune software that they'd probably help you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, not a doubt at all. I actually, I was telling Colt like a few weeks ago, said I ordered the Max, get that tune software on the thing. And he's like, when do you want me to do that shit? And I'm like, if you have a free moment of any form, of any nature, you don't know what to work on, do this. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, JL
he started laughing at me and he just went and built all the shit that we have to build. So
anybody watching, download Tune and then learn that.
Yep, Tune
You don't
4.5
have
is
to
that'll
free.
help
spend
you a lot. Yeah,
3,500
just doing that will
unless
give
you're
you
a shop,
really
you know?
a big head start. Yeah.
So show us this real quick, and then I'm gonna address Scott's question.
So I just want to go through two things. I want to go through EQing the mid bass and the subwoofer, and then aligning the phase response of those two. Doing the other phase response of the other speakers would be very similar, but I'm just showing you the mid bass and sub because that's where a lot of your focus is going to be.
Yeah,
so
that's where phase is the most important.
First things first, I'm going to engage a crossover on my mid bass. So 24 dB Linkwitz Riley. I'm going to go.
Bro, we playing mid bass down to 20 hertz, bro. Let's roll it.
No, I'm going 80 to 400 hertz. And you can
magical keys, Bobby, to tell Colt, press the V key and it reset and it refreshes your RTA.
As far as hotkeys, you can go to show shortcuts and you can actually print this list of hotkeys. So there's a list for general, and then there's a list for the measure tab. So you can print all these, you could laminate them and hang them at your tuning cart.
Sweet.
I'll
That's
tattoo
awesome.
that on Tyson's
Colt.
back so Colt can read it.
All right, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to raise the level just a little bit, bring my mid bass up a little bit. So I'm going to position the data relative to the target. I want the data in a position that makes sense. So right now I have most of the areas where there's an issue, like this issue here, just at the target or above it. I'm actually going to lower my low pass filter so that it matches the target more closely. Probably right about there. So now the slope is closer.
Raise that banding up a little bit. Show us some
How
more.
do you bring that top side down?
Well, we're going to do that with EQ. So we can either grab a band of EQ like this, and we can manually do this process, right? One at a time. You could drag your EQs.
So if you had a separate DSP that wasn't a JL DSP, you could manually input. You could, while you're watching this, you can make adjustments to the DSP on the other screen and watch.
Which is the normal way we've all done this.
Yeah,
always.
Dude,
in
this
real
is
time,
so freaking cool that you don't have to put
average
a
everything
number in there. You're just pulling this dot down.
Oh yeah, the tune.
Watching.
Well, I mean, even like in the audio control, this is all pretty straightforward. It's just on another computer beside.
That's it.
You just grab it and beep a bopple. This is all pretty straightforward.
And with Max, you can see it in real time. That's the.
Yeah, that's
so. Hang on, Matt. What you just did there, this dot that's in the dead center, you moved it. It was all the way on the right, and now it's basically left of those other two. So you
can change the frequency that it's.
Yeah, it'll change position.
It's adjusting.
Yeah, I can change all that.
How and adjust its amplitude.
So I can do all this manually, as you can see, right? I can do all this. Or if you have your mic connected, you have your output there, which is the left mid bass, and your target, I could just press auto set EQ and let it do the work for me.
Woo, that looks way better than what you did, Matt.
I was just trying to rush it. And then
but you have to be paired with for that to work like that, you have to be paired with a JL DSP or VXI amp or something like that.
Actually, no, you can do
that.
I was
going to say, but you can. I was going to show that a little while ago, but we went over to Matt's screen. You can do the auto set EQ without being connected to a DSP. You can do it in simulation mode, and then you can take those measurements and put them into your DSP separately.
Oh, so you could have the data, and it's like adjust this EQ 4.7 dBs down, negative 4.7, and it
gives you the whole list right there.
3.1, and at this frequency 2.4.
Yeah. So this is my truck, and you can see like the curve kind of matches already because it's already EQ, it's already done. But you see, I loaded the captured trace in there. I loaded the one I wanted. The target is the mid range, and the output's mid range. I gotta go reselect it.
You're not in. Okay, there you go.
And then, so this isn't live data. This is recorded, captured data. And then auto set EQ, and there it tells me go put those EQ settings into your DSP, and it'll get closer to the target curve.
Yeah. Now there are some minor deviations.
is fucking gangster shit. Because it would not take, it would only take like 2 minutes longer to do that to a fucking audio control or any other fucking DSP.
Yeah.
You can.
So if you were to take, like, if your buddy wanted his mid bass to sound like yours, you could basically just, you take these numbers and go input
only
it
if
to
it's
his
the same
DSP.
truck with the same speakers in the same exact
if you want to aim for like a general tonality, you can be like, okay, this is the target curve. We're gonna aim for this. Auto set EQ, you put these settings into your separate DSP.
Yeah,
you're good to go.
Yeah, that's dope. I understand why you like this thing so much and why you're getting into it.
Dude, the auto
well,
set
I mean,
EQ,
you can do a lot with a regular RTA, but you're only looking at the shit.
So the auto set EQ, you can do that with
software is really where most of the magic is happening. The Max just makes that shit easier
Well,
and more precise.
The Max gives you access to phase and impulse response and all that stuff. You can't.
So like where he's doing real-time RTA tuning, you can do real-time phase alignment, which is
we're going to do that right now. So right now I've matched my speaker to the target. I'm going to capture this and I'm going to call it the left mid bass RTA. Now I'm going to do the right side real quick. So I'm going to unmute the right side. I'm going to apply my crossovers. So 24 dB link with Riley, 80 to 400, unmute, and I'm going to change this one slightly. So I'm going to lower the level first, get it down closer to the target. And then I'm going to go ahead and just press auto set EQ. And then again, you can modify any of this. You're not locked into anything. So if you don't like it, you just do it again or change it yourself. That's one, like, this isn't like a magical box where you can't control any of the data. And that's a big distinction because a lot of the DSP tools in the industry,
when you auto-tune,
give you is what you get.
Yeah.
So this is right mid bass.
It's almost like the auto tune just like sets the bass or the foundation
it gets you a good,
for you.
Really good starting point.
It just gets you close, and then it's tweaking.
Well, I mean, it did a lot. It was like, when it was like, I'm real close, but I'm a little fucky on the front end over here, on the back end over there. And he's like, whoop, he's just moving the EQ point around with his fucking mouse. It's like,
no, I love this.
This is the sub. Like this. I'm raising the sub frequency a little bit to get more energy to match the target better. So now I have the sub crossed over.
I feel like really this simulating the auto tune of that and beep boppling that information into, the whatever aftermarket DSP, other market DSP, I don't know what the fuck you call it, whatever, the audio control or the Helix that we're using, and just punching that information in and looking at it is probably still the best way to do this. I don't think adjusting it manually on the fly is ideal. I feel like at least the first time around, we go auto tune and then you go, what do I have? And it says adjust to these points. And then we really know how accurate its simulation is. And we get familiar with that. So we might even see some of that on the front end where it would be off. That might even be
all that matters at the end of the day is matching it to your target, because your target is the perfect.
However you get there.
That doesn't mean play your mid bass at 40 hertz to match the target, because most mid bass will fail. That means that if the data is telling you that this mid bass can't play 80 hertz in this truck just because it's a crappy location or the door wasn't treated properly, then you should modify the target to match the data. We have
we're going to bring our subs up to run and roll off a little higher if we can to help that mid.
So right here, we're playing the sub up to 113 hertz. That's the low pass filter. And most people would be like, 113, that's crazy. But it's not actually 113. If you look at the target is an 80 hertz target. So in this car, in order to get it to play 80 hertz, we had to raise it up to 113. That doesn't mean
it's all based on roll off or cancellation in the vehicle, and there's so many factors that play into that. Now, there's certain vehicles that maybe if you're crossed over at 113 hertz would have an enormous spike at 95 hertz and it would sound like shit. But in this particular vehicle, and you equalize the shit out of it to give it what you want in your end result target curve. So if you're playing your mid and for some reason you're not getting below 100 hertz, then you go, well, I can't get the mid to do below 100. I would like it to get down to 80, but it just fucking won't. So let me see how well I can do it with my subwoofer.
Right. And you don't raise your high pass filter from 80 to 100. You leave your high pass filter at 80 on the mid bass. Don't it'll still play 80. It's just not as loud as you'd like it to be.
You adjust the target.
Right. You don't throw that little bit that it's giving you away. That makes a smoother blend of output anyway.
Yep. So I put some of that EQ back in just because I like a little extra sub. I don't want to take too much out. So now I've captured that. That's sub RTA. So now that I have the individual traces captured for all three speakers, now we can look at how the phase response of those three speakers looks.
Yeah,
right?
Go
ahead.
Baba. The variances between vehicles, like how low a mid bass will play, that's where you can go in and adjust your targets. Be like, okay, the mid bass in this truck just will not play below 100 hertz. I need to adjust the target so a sub will play higher, and we can just use the 100 hertz that the mid bass will play down to, and that is the new target for that.
Yeah, you'd actually be surprised how high a lot of people play their subs. Like Jeffrey's car, he has 8-inch mid bass in his doors, and they're crossed over at 94 hertz. And he's an IASQA Triple Crown winner twice. Low mid bass, like playing the mid bass really low, is not always like required. So, all right. So now we're gonna look at the phase. The first thing,
don't base your shit off of the manual that comes with the speaker that says 30.
No,
hertz
don't
to
do
500.
that shit. That's a terrible idea.
Right. Yeah.
People are like, oh, this 3-inch driver has a frequency response of 140 to fucking 20K, and you're like, no,
yeah.
All right. So first thing, before we look at the sub, we want to make the left and the right mid bass work as one. We want them to work totally together in every way. So I'm going to unmute my left mid bass, and this is the phase response for my left mid bass. And as you know, the phase response of one speaker doesn't matter. So I'm just going to capture this, and I'm going to call this left mid bass phase. And now I'm going to look at the right side and compare the right side to the left side.
Look at that phase wrap.
Tell me what you see. Drew, you're always giving away the answers.
My bad.
Well, there you got that weird thing going on in the middle. The first part looks good.
Right. So they're in phase really well at low frequency and continue upwards. And then there's this wrap that happens.
Yeah.
It's a phase shift. And it's happening.
That's where you would put an all pass filter.
But which speaker?
The fucking red one.
Nope, because that'll make it worse. You need to apply the phase shift to the speaker that doesn't have the issue. You're matching the issue is what you're doing.
Really?
So you're not taking the issue away.
We can't, because it's part of the vehicle.
You can't take it away. You have to put
That's why
into
what
the
about
side.
the subwoofer, though? Is the subwoofer not, but it's not playing that frequency?
We're not looking at the sub yet.
So if you add that, what frequency is that? Okay, so the sub's not playing that. It's at just over 200 hertz.
Yeah, so what we're looking at is left and right mid bass.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know. I just wasn't sure which frequency we were at, and I don't know what effect other speakers are going to have on that. But that's going to only be the mid bass, thankfully. Because how fucked would it be if you had some fucked up phase wrap in the vehicle at 600 hertz, where your 3-inch and your fucking 6-inch are both playing it? That'd be
it totally happens.
I bet it does.
Yeah.
My life in my truck right now.
All right.
So how do you show us how you fix that, or if you can?
So here, I'm going to put my cursor right where the wrap happens. So it's 211 hertz. So now I'm going to go turn on my all-pass filter on the left channel, and I'm going to type in,
doesn't have the wrap.
Right. And I'm going to type in 211. Okay. Now you can see it split it. See how now the red is split?
Okay.
So now we have to adjust the Q, just like an EQ has a Q, a wide or narrow Q. We're going to start adjusting the Q, and we're just going to keep on adjusting, and we're just going to keep going until the pretty lines match.
And boom.
Okay, so now
You have
both
in-phase
lines,
basis.
those are left and right. So that yellow line that's going through the middle,
The
why
yellow
did
was
that
left
change?
original response.
That
So
was
it's
the
still
original.
showing original.
Nope.
Well,
Okay,
that's because
so
I
this is-
captured it. Now I'm going to
Okay,
hide
so
it.
if you ditch the original, this is what it now looks like.
Yeah.
Correct.
The red is
I got it. That makes total sense.
red is the right mid base. Green is
Okay.
now the left mid base, and you can see
Yep.
that they are now in phase.
So now they're
Yeah.
in phase, and then you keep
Okay.
going a little higher. They do deviate a little bit. See how now the red one is trailing the green one?
Right.
So if I add a little bit of delay here, no, hold on, let me show you polarity first. If I flip the polarity, you're going to see it's in between everything else. It's 180 degrees out, right?
Okay.
So if I add just a tiny bit of delay on this channel, watch that red start walking its way in.
And that's the only time where you would want to adjust delay after setting it is if you set an all pass filter that affects it like that.
So you see,
but it is affecting everything though, right? So
it is,
everything.
but it affects higher frequency more than the lower.
More
frequency. It
significantly
takes
than
more
lower
delay at low frequency to get there. Now
Okay.
you can see that it's closer, but that's not necessarily right. Like if you actually look down below, see right in this region how the EQ is different.
Right.
That's why that was there. It's because there's a difference in EQ. If we got that
Okay.
closer, this likely wouldn't be
You
such
could go
a big
back
deviation.
and fix that EQ a little bit in your manual part of the EQ to fix that. So you might do that before
Right.
you made that
Right.
delay adjustment.
So if I go
It's
back,
almost like you have to kind of go.
There you go.
If you want to like a super high tune, you got to go back and forth quite a bit. Like
yeah.
it-
So
it
if I
just
were to
makes
take
sense.
this EQ,
And that's one of the big advantages of
Cut
Max
that.
is you're able to do all that in real time.
Yeah, I love this.
you can see
What-
there's a difference there. But again, this is at 600 hertz where the difference is, and that's
Yeah.
out of band. This mid bass is only playing up to 283. My target's 400. 600 hertz is way out of range. So I'm not super concerned at that frequency, right?
So
That
even
was
though
the
it's still
thing that I
playing
noticed.
those frequencies,
That was a kind of a fun thing that the guys in the big mega cab, we call it the prospector, that we've been working on, is I found the guys were equalizing the shit out of some stuff that was a little bit out of the bandwidth of the speakers, and I was like, hey, did you guys know you did this? And they were like, oh shit. And I was like, it only on one channel, and that kind of made shit weird. If you start getting carried away out there, you can start actually having a little bit of an effect in a negative way when you're trying to boost the shit out of something that is
it's
not
even supposed to be playing.
in your crossover fucking bandwidth.
Right.
And
Yeah, this is way up there. Yep.
So
yeah,
even though it's still
actually-
showing that information, is it just at like a much lower dB?
Yeah, it's a much lower level. You're at 48 dB down here compared to
but the
76.
top map doesn't really show level. As far as
It does
top
as it starts to blank out. Like you see how you get to the end and it starts blanking.
oh
the
yeah,
data?
it starts turning into like a fucking mess over there.
Yeah, but
and
so
they're
it
really
doesn't
not
show,
even a
like-
mess, just the insignificant of
It doesn't show
of
overall
data
level.
to
Yeah.
even study. Okay.
If you look
Okay.
closely, what we actually need here is another all pass filter. The green wraps and the red doesn't. If I were to move our all pass filter that's currently at 211 up to 618, so if I were to move this one to 618, see how now it's trending downward and then it comes back up?
Yeah, it's a lot closer.
Can you
Yeah,
put a
so-
second all pass in there?
I could if my DSP had a second all pass, but this DSP only has one per channel.
For
So,
Nice.
but again, it's so far out of band, it's not a big concern.
It's not as matter.
Not a
You
big
could
deal.
almost avoid that if you initially intended for that driver to play that. You might go, oh fuck, never mind. I'm going to shorten that bandwidth a little bit.
There you
And
go.
I'm going to let
Yes.
these other drivers do that task because hopefully they don't have
Yep.
This weird shit going on.
Yep. So
And
and,
that's-
and also
what did you call it? Wrap?
A
Thank-
wrap.
What?
wrap. Yep.
What
Bobby,
wrap?
well, you use audio control, and their new update, the beta update, gives you 2 all passes per channel.
Yeah, we call it a phase
the
wrap.
Moscone DSP, you could like put as many all passes
Helix
and
the same
whatever
way.
else filters, like 8 per channel of whatever the fuck you want.
Yeah.
Which was really
Right.
cool.
So
I
How
heard,
many
I heard a
tweak
rumor that
allow
some
you
of the
to do?
JL stuff might get that soon. I heard a rumor about that.
I mean, the tweak
Okay.
is so old that
To-
like they're due for a new fancy DSP to go
yeah,
with this Max.
we'd like-
I can only imagine what that would do.
We'd like some new stuff for sure, but just keep in mind that Mr. Iaska Triple Crown uses VXI amplifiers in his car. You don't need a super uber powerful DSP to get great sound. So, you know, these
no,
DSPs
absolutely.
are
I'm
very
not
powerful.
saying that they're slacking. I mean, the shit's
Right.
amazing.
Right.
I mean,
So-
trust me. I want more all passes in my truck just because I'm playing in fuzz and I want to fix all of it.
Yeah.
So
Now at this point, we've
mid
met
bases.
the phase response of the left and the right mid bass.
Oh, you
so
show
if we play them together, you're going to see that they sum to a positive value on the RTA all the way up until they get to that area where that extra wrap was, where they don't sum as well. There's no like legit cancellation, but it's fine, right? That's in the mid-range territory. I'm not worried about that.
Turn off the all pass filter on that one channel while showing.
Turn off the all pass filter and refresh. And if
No,
you look
why-
right here, 211 right there, there's a dip. Turn it back on, and the dip's gone.
Gotcha. How come they keep continue on, like all the
Over
way
here?
out into whatever? Yeah, like what is it doing there?
That's
Are
just
they
part
actually-
that. So that's part of how the multiplexing works, and it's also really low in frequency. In level. That's all the way
Okay.
down at 35 dB. So like really, really quiet. So you're actually seeing some of the acoustic noise floor at higher frequency.
Blake, I can answer this for you.
Okay.
So
There's no difference. There is an audible difference, but to say one sounds better than the other is wrong. There's just a difference.
The only thing I would say, Blake, is Class D's been around for quite a while at this point, and the guy we keep referencing, Mr. Iaska, who keeps winning these triple crowns, he uses all Class D VXI amplifiers in his build, and he's winning top scores at just about every competition he goes to. So, there are some people that don't believe that Class D can be good, but they just haven't heard a good system. That's all.
Yeah. That's
You know
almost
what?
just like a myth.
Even if they do hear one, they'll still tell you that it doesn't sound as good as it would if it was Class AB. Now, here's the problem: is in the early 2000s, late 90s, Class D
When D
amplifiers
first came
sounded
out.
like shit.
Yeah.
That was
They're almost
25
only bass amplifiers back in the day too.
Yeah,
when they
they was
first
like
came
only
out.
bass amplifiers at the end. But
Hey Blake,
so-
if someone ever argues with you, just tag Jeffrey Hald. He has a picture ready to post every time, dude. He is on it. He's ready, bud.
yeah,
He's
right.
The
Jeffrey's
technology
quite
has
ready.
come so long, such a
yeah,
far
it's
way
been
that
now.
the filter.
I
and-
can
and the
tell
MOSFETs
you
help
from
us so much.
what I have been told, the guys at Audio Dynamics have a blind testing room, and they don't actually have to use blind people to do this. But at the click of a button and in an instant, they can change the signal and the output to the exact same speaker from one amplifier to another. And Aaron at Audio Dynamics has told me that it is nearly impossible for anyone at all to hear the difference in their like $90 least expensive, cheapest 45 by 2 Class D cheapy little amplifier and a like $80,000 home audio tube amplifier. And if you have them set at the exact same level of output, right?
Yep.
Like by tuning each and every speaker in this network to have the same level of overall output. And they, at the click of a button, can switch between a True Technologies, super duper, blah, 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 a fucking home audio tube amp, Audio Dynamics highest end, super badass amplifiers, they're Class D, and like their cheapest, least expensive thing they've ever made, and most people wouldn't be able to fucking pick
Nope.
one from another.
Well, I mean, Wouldn't like 100 watts with a perfectly clean sine wave? How the hell are you going to tell the difference? How can you tell the difference?
Yeah, there's
Just-
there's a caveat there, and it's they have to be good quality, and they have to be within their limit. Those are the only two things, because you could have a really, really crappy amplifier that's super junk, and you may hear issues that are in the signal path because they designed something in a way that doesn't make sense, where there's noise in the signal or something like that, right? But if you have a quality amp, even if it's only $90, if it's a decent amplifier,
it could be super duper cheap, but they didn't fuck anything up in it, and you're only making 45 watts out of each channel.
Yeah.
Once you
It
get
should
to the
sound exactly the same as a fucking goddamn tube amp.
right, once you get to the top end of the its limits, then amplifiers can have different types of misbehaviors where you may pick up on some of the nuances that you'll hear in different types of amplifiers.
Oh yeah,
But
so
play
let's
within
say
their range.
I would bet my life that if you cranked them up and to the point where that little itty bitty $90 amplifier was starting to struggle a little bit, you'd start being able to pick a difference between each one real fast. But
But could you tell which is which without knowing? Probably not. You could be like, okay, these sound different, but I don't know which is which.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to like, that's a tube amp,
no
and that's a
reference.
Class D, and that's an AB,
Watch
and
your
that's
mouth,
a cheap
boy.
ass amp.
Watch your mouth, boy.
I don't know.
And
No. I'm sorry, Casey.
I mean, I could tell you.
You can hear a difference between a fucking Terra amps and a Sound Digital and a fucking Stetson and a fucking super cheap Class
And a
D
puddle of
amp.
pond water.
To be clear, I'm gonna stay neutral in this, but to be clear, there's also a big difference in reliability. How long
And
can hold
that
up
big word you used was quality. That's the big
quality,
difference.
right? There's a lot of other factors that come into it besides just the way it sounds. So there's a lot.
Yeah,
but as far
some
as
of
from
them
a
might
sound
get
point-
blistering hot, whether they have any significant signal going into them or not,
Right.
and want to burst into flames.
Well, show us this mid bass and sub real quick since
All
we're
right,
already here.
I'm just about done. So now we have both the left mid bass and the right mid bass playing together. So I'm going to capture that phase response, and I'm going to call that both mid bass phase.
Yeah,
right?
Go ahead and get Colt and you and Tyson into capturing stuff and labeling it properly.
Yes. Make up your
Otherwise
own
you're like,
names.
which one was that, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Make up your own names that you'll remember.
Oh, and
I'm
make
gonna-
sure to
I'm gonna,
make new
I'm gonna
folders
pay
for new
them.
tunes.
I'm gonna pay them both on the clock to sit and actually just watch this fucking episode of me being
Go
half
to
drunk
you.
nonsense.
Send them to YouTube, bro. There's hours of training on how to use this thing.
Yeah. So
I
now,
know, like this, they'll understand this a lot better because it's a little straightforward, and there's like in the middle information about other silly shit that we talk about. So they'll absorb a lot of this really well, and they'll be able to understand better what's in the training videos that are online.
Yeah.
Because some of those, they get a little bit like, as soon as you start talking, if you don't know shit, you're immediately overwhelmed.
That's what happened. I was flying out to you, actually, I think. I went to
Yeah, when
play
you arrived,
Working
you
with
were like-
Phase. 30 seconds in, I went, nope, closed it.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
you can see here now what we're looking at. The blue is both mid bass playing together, and the red is the sub. What would you say about that?
That the sub doesn't matter at around 200 hertz, but everything looks great. You got something kind of going on around 30 hertz, but I don't think your mid has anything to do with that shit.
Well, that is the mid. It's see how the mid kind of falls off at 30 hertz. That's just a wiggle. It's that notch at 30 hertz. So it's not a big deal, and it's not relevant because they're in phase. It's still
out of
passing
range,
right through
though.
that point. So now if we play all three speakers together and we look at how they interact, you can see we sum very positively. So and then to check it, just to make sure that what you did was right, you can flip the polarity on the sub and say, okay, what would happen if I flip the polarity and I get a big old null, and you flip it back and you got plenty of extra energy there. You're perfectly in phase with the sub. That sub's going to sound like the bass is up front. You're going to have the impact in the mid bass to sub region where, where the magic happens. You're going to have all that. So,
yeah.
And then if we were doing the rest of the phase, we would basically continue upward. We would match the left mid bass to the left mid range to the left tweeter, the right mid bass to the right mid range to the right tweeter, then check the left side against the right side and make sure that they're all good.
That's where I was messing up originally. Is I would do left to right mid bass, then mid bass is up, then I would do left to right mid range, and then left to right tweeter. Yeah, that was like I said. That was what I was.
You want to dial in an entire side as if it was one speaker, and then dial in the right side as if it was one speaker, and then make the two speakers interact well together.
Oh.
Yeah.
I've always done, right, here's the right tweeter, here's the left tweeter, here's the right mid, and here's the left mid, and on the way back, and pairing as I go, and then blending everything all together. I like your right left. That it almost, you saying it now seems like I'm like, God, it's kind of like an overthink thing, right? It that makes way more sense when you say that now, and now I feel dumb.
Yeah, you want to have a single left speaker, basically, as far as phase and time. It's a single left speaker, then you make your single right speaker meet at your face.
So you're saying you tuned all the speakers on the right side first, and then all the speakers on the left side first?
No, so we would first delay, go through the impulse response, check the polarities, set the delays. Then we would go to the RTA, and we'd go through and match each speaker's response to the target and capture all of that data. And then we go into phase, starting with the mid bass, because phase obviously is very important at low frequency. So starting with the mid bass, we make the mid bass work together as one speaker, and then match the sub to the mid bass. And then after that, I would make sure that the left speaker, the left mid bass, the left mid range, left tweeter work together, and then right mid bass, right mid range, right tweeter work together. So as a team, because at that point you're looking at how do these speakers interact with each other. That's what phase is. It's telling you how they're going to interact. And obviously having your crossovers lined up too.
So I was wrong, and then I was wrong again. And really the best way is to get halfway through the middle of this shit, starting from the low notes, and then go left and then go right, or right and then left, and then put that shit together. Because that's what
I want to be very clear, though. This is not the method. This is a method. This is the one we recommend, and it's not the only method out there. Jeffrey uses a different method when he tunes, and I think he's found over time that maybe our method is a little more efficient because we've worked on this for years. But it's a method, and we don't want you to take away that you have to do it this way. You absolutely don't have to do it this way. You could do EQ first, and then you could do time, and then phase. You could do it however you'd like. But in this way that we've kind of put together, you have the most efficient amount of steps, the least amount of steps, and you don't have to go back and check your work all the time. It's very
be really awesome
linear
is to make a list and plan of attack, and we're like, I'm going to EQ every speaker first, and then I'm going to do the phase, and then I'm going to do this, and do it each and every way, and listen to it and figure out which you prefer. Also, doing it and making reference to what equalization the system does or recommends you do, and comparing between them. And finding out, like you might look at one and go, shit, man, when I EQ'd everything first, and then I did time alignment, and then I did all, and then I matched all the stuff and set all the crossover points and adjusted things, I found that there was less shit. There was less aggressive equalization and less wild ass crossover points, or the vice versa. So it'd be something to, for something like, Colt and Tyson to do to extend their skill set. Not only would they be not only would they have a shitload of experience tuning, but they would play with different ways of doing it, and they would also refine the process and find their version of the most efficient, at least on that particular vehicle.
Right.
So they could go, oh, well,
I say just have.
I did that mega cab 4 different ways, and this way seemed like it sounded best to my ears. And I also noticed that it had at least aggressive equalization per channel overall.
Yeah. So
maybe
you'll
someday
notice
they'll have it in the software that it has some kind of equalization efficiency ratio or percentage that it tracks in the JL system, and you're like, I beepa bobbled it this way, and it's like, and you had a 31% efficiency, and you're like, I did it this way, and it's 33% efficiency. This should be better, and who knows which one actually sounds any fucking better.
you better watch what
To
you
reach
wish
the
for.
target curve, right? I mean, if you're like, if it's pulling down, 144 hertz and it's boosting the shit out of 170.
And then you could have it like connected to their payroll. So if they fuck up, it'll just start taking money out of their.
Yes,
checks.
that's right. And then it comes out of Colt's ass. You're like,
It's
fucking
27%, Cole.
Efficiency ratio has been lower than 40% for the last 3 tunes you did. So
yeah,
I'm
docked.
So you'll notice on this tuning process, steps 6 through 9 are iterative. So you can kind of do those in whatever order you'd like. Like you can kind of go back and do them again. But this, if you're going to follow a method, then follow a method. If you're not going to follow a method and you're going to play around, then do whatever you like. But I think some of the issues happen when people try to look at like this process and they're like, all right, I'm going to take this, and this from here. But then I'm going to go do Drew's process over here, and I'm going to stuff these things together, and then they miss things. So if you're going to follow a process, if you're going to follow a process, just pick one and stick with it, or make up your own or something. But don't just take stuff from every single one and mush them together and think it'll work.
Yeah, it's like anytime. I mean, and let's simplify it a little bit. Anytime I teach a technician how to do something and I'm in the middle of teaching them and they suddenly have an idea and I'm like, look, I've done this 10,000 fucking times. So go ahead and do it my way 1,000 fucking times before you have an idea. Okay? So
see, I was doing the opposite. I was trying to have the
your
ideas.
job is to do what the fuck I told you to do the way I told you to do it. So we'd be fucking idiots if we started to make up our own way. Now we'd be fucking brilliant if we went, all right, this is the way Matt says to do it, and this is the way Jeff says to do it, and this is the way fucking, I don't know, Christopher fucking Pete says to do it. He's like the winningest guy fucking ever. So if I had a way to do that and I went, all right, Colt, do it that way, do it that way, do it that way. They're all going to be fucking outstanding. And we get to listen to them. And the best thing of it is that they would have all of the experience, and it wouldn't be for them to figure out their own fucking way. It might be for them to figure out which way they
shouldn't go.
Yeah.
Or which ways not to go.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah,
I'm real confident that Matt's way or Jeff's way or especially Chris's way is probably going to be fucking amazing, and they won't be fucking up at all. And if they're like, oh, well, you know what? This one made the most sense to me because it was the third one I did and I was able to understand the instructions easier, or the way that Matt told me to do it, it was easier for me to understand him or Drew or whatever version of it. So,
hey, Matt, can you send me this thing that's on the screen?
Yeah, I'll send you a copy of it.
Cool.
So, again, this process is definitely just it's something that we found is very efficient. It checks all the boxes, and the most important step is step 11, which is get in the car and listen to it. We tell you, do not rely on the measurement system. You have to listen to it at the end and verify that it sounds right. Because as an example, if that target curve shape, we had a couple different variations. If you have a really, really crappy target, you can tune it and it'll sound really, really crappy, even if it matches the target. So, start with a known good target.
That some people like BBC and some don't.
Byron
Start,
can tell you all
start with a
about
known
that.
good target. That's a good piece of advice. Find
If
something
your target is BBC, you can have it if
Yeah.
you want it.
and, and
That's
step,
what I learned from JL Audio. Is if you want BBC,
You can have it.
step
you
12
can have it.
is the step that you were talking about earlier, Bobby. Recapture data. Put the mics in after you listen to the card. You're like, oh my god, this sounds amazing. This is what I want our curve to sound like. Pop the mics in just for a second, capture the frequency response, and then modify your target to match that response. And then you have your own signature sound, and that's your shop's tune.
The Gately curve.
Gately curve, yeah.
Gately little or LWC.
All right, boys. I want to end the show like we started. I'm going to show what GPT has to say about the Max, a comprehensive guide on the Max. I asked it to show to write one for me. It's
Fuck.
It's just
gonna be like
ridiculous, dude.
How many
Can you guys see
pages?
it? It's just
All
this.
right.
It's just 87 bullet points. But it's unbelievable. It wrote this in 10 seconds, 20 seconds.
It's not totally accurate, but
it's not awful. I mean,
yeah, it's actually got more than 8 channels of inputs. It's got optical too.
I'm saying I've seen shops do worse. I mean,
I've said far stupider things than this today.
oh, dude,
very interesting.
Yeah. I see a
wake
lot
up
of
with
people
dumber
using
ideas
this to
than
write
that
their
for sure.
manuals. I asked it about.
Wow, look at that.
mid-base,
It didn't just write that. It wrote a whole bunch of other shit too. It was all, you know what? I kind of fucked that up. So what if you just were trying to get the best mid-base response? I can do that too for you. That's
Look what it told you for best mid-base response. Like it's kind of scary, man. We're gonna you don't really have to create anything anymore. Just ask the computer to do it for you. Pretty
That's
fucking
very interesting for sure.
You
Well,
could put
boys.
some really fucked up shit in there, and it would tell you why it's a good idea. Like, why should we?
Dude, you could ask it how to
invade the Capitol
overthrow
or
the
some fucked
government
up shit,
of
or like,
some country. and it'll
why
tell you.
should this president be impeached? Why shouldn't it? I mean, you could ask it for some really fucked up shit, and really, really dumb people would be like, "I agree," and they'll all go do it, and that would be fucked up. So, yeah.
Yeah.
You ruin now, and it'll be all your fault, Steve.
Well, no, I'm just learning about it.
No, you're the first one. This is all your fault.
Yeah.
Anybody follows any fucked up instructions from fucking
ChatGPT.
Well, I'm about to start
that
using
LWC.
I'm going to start offering copyright services, and I'll write anything for anybody. Just tell me what you need.
Yeah, I need verbiage
I'm
for
surprised Mac's still awake and functioning.
Shit. All right, boys.
All right, well,
great show. I had fun.
Fuck. Matt, thank you so much, man. We learned a whole bunch. You're a fucking hero.
I'm glad to help anytime. If you guys want to do something another time, I'd be happy to discuss it. We also can show boats, a home system, basically, most systems we have access to. So.
Well, shit, we'll
I'll be
drag
getting
you
with you
back on the
soon,
show
too.
again in a couple months, I guess.
Talk.
And I'm going to order a tweak ASAP because I need to get one in the Explorer. Start messing with it. So, cool.
Gentlemen,
All right,
have
boys.
a great night.
Have a nice one.